Chapter 95. Young Qian walked over, picked up an energy recovery pill, and did the same thing. The two of them stood in silence for a long time. Ashamed. Guan Weiwu, who had been standing silently, suddenly shook his head. Young Qian sighed, "The light from the furnace is dancing, but I hope I don't wake up." Yu Qianqiu looked at the two of them, his expression a little gloomy. "The pills I refined made one of you feel ashamed, and the other hope you don't wake up. I've never seen such sarcasm before. I refined my own foundation building pills, but didn't I still succeed in building my foundation? Although I ate a little too much, damn it. What the hell are these two old bastards doing? Yu Qianqiu, who taught you this alchemy method?" Guan Weiwu stared at him with a deep gaze. Young Qian also stared at him. Yu Qianqiu scratched his head. He really couldn't think of anyone to shift the blame to, so he could only answer honestly, "Disciple is ignorant. Disciple has never learned alchemy properly, so I could only try to refine it randomly. In the end, I refined it like this." Guan Weiwu raised an eyebrow, asking, "Is it really a method you figured out yourself?" Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly, "Disciple doesn't dare to lie to master. It's really a method I figured out randomly." Guan Weiwu glanced at Yang Qian, then shook his head and laughed bitterly, "To think that I boasted that my alchemy skills were unparalleled in the cultivation world, and even felt proud because people called me alchemy addict. Who would have thought that I was as short-sighted as a frog at the bottom of a well? I can't even compare to a disciple who has just started alchemy. How shameful." "Ah! Was that disciple talking about me? Was it me?" Yu Qianqiu asked himself again and again. No matter how stupid he was, he could still hear some clues from Guan Weiwu's words. It turned out that contrary to his initial guess, it wasn't that he didn't refine it well, but that he refined it very well. Calm down, I must calm down." Yu Qianqiu suppressed his increasingly excited emotions. Guan Weiwu closed his eyes and pondered for a while, then took out a spiritual herb and threw it into the furnace to refine. Young Qian knew that he had just seen Yu Qianqiu's alchemy method, so he was probably testing it now. Yu Qianqiu obediently stood to the side and didn't say anything. Although he was very good at acting obediently after getting a bargain, it really wasn't convenient for him to be too frivolous at this time. He could only silently praise the pill recipe jade disc left behind by the pill ancestor. Pang! The lid of the furnace popped up, and the qi returning pill was absorbed into Guan Weiwu's hand as soon as it came out of the furnace. Young Qian was the first to step forward to take a look, and Yu Qianqiu also followed. 20 white pills were still warm as they lay in Guan Weiwu's hand. The 20 pills were completely white, and not a single one was useless. Unfortunately, there was still a slight difference in quality between them and the pills that Yu Qianqiu had refined. When Guan Weiwu was refining, he wanted to learn from Yu Qianqiu and use his divine sense to control the airflow. Although he could also control it, he lacked his disciple's freedom. No matter how hard he tried, it was like he had seen a ghost. If he used too much strength, it would run faster than a rabbit, and if he used too little strength, it would turn a corner. He was not like Yu Qianqiu, whose spiritual sense would occasionally point to the east and occasionally point to the west. When he had nothing to do, he would draw a circle to the left and a circle to the right. Guan Weiwu was almost angered to death by the airflow. He couldn't tame it, and in the end, he became a cat instead of a tiger. He also accepted his fate, and in the end, he used his divine sense to forcibly control things to refine. Fortunately, Yu Qianqiu had already seen the alchemy steps clearly. With his many years of alchemy experience, he naturally mastered it effortlessly, and just like that, the alchemy was completed. Elder Guan, it's a success. Although it wasn't as good as Yu Qianqiu's, Young Qian still couldn't help but shout excitedly, because this was too important for supporting Xian Island. As long as the alchemy method of qi recovery pill was correct, it could be recommended for use in the entire alchemy pavilion. After all, not everyone could refine the highest grade alchemy pills like Yu Qianqiu's. Guan Weiwu was a ready-made example, but it was enough. Guan Weiwu nodded solemnly and sighed, what a pity. It's just the shape, but not the spirit. After saying that, he stared at Yu Qianqiu with sparkling eyes. Yang Qian also did the same. Damn it. I really didn't do it on purpose. Now, even Master's limelight has been overshadowed. Yu Qianqiu subconsciously shrank back. Guan Weiwu took a deep breath, turned his head and said, Yang Qian, ask the sect leader and Elder Shangshan and Elder Puna to come quickly. Yes. Yang Qian bowed and quickly flew out of the alchemy room. When the disciples outside saw the steward flying in the cave in a hurry, they looked at each other, not knowing what was going on. Shangshan. Puna Evil. Journey of Heroes. Laba Kanji. Island of Heroes. Supporting Xian Island. There didn't seem to be any relationship between the two islands, right? Yu Qianqiu looked at Master and really wanted to ask if there was Laba Kanji on the island. Not long after, Guan Weiwu suddenly listened and nodded. He's here, Yu Qianqiu, go out and welcome the sect leader. When the two of them left the alchemy room, they saw the sect leader Feng Xiangtian leading a group of people in big strides. The surrounding disciples kept bowing and said, Sect leader, elder. It wasn't just one or two elders, there were more than 10 of them. They hadn't seen something like this in the alchemy pavilion's underground alchemy room for many years. Guan Weiwu frowned and shouted, unrelated disciples, go do what you need to do, this has nothing to do with you. His voice reverberated throughout the underground space and the disciples who came to bow dispersed. Feng Xiangtian, who was dressed in a bright robe, stood out like a crane among chickens. He laughed from afar and said, Weiwu, is the good news that Yang Qian told me true? I've brought all the elders here to verify it. You mustn't disappoint us. Yu Qianqiu realized that his archenemy, Yan Shu, was also here. He was leading the way with Yang Qian in front of the sect leader and the others. When they came closer, the master and disciple were about to bow when Feng Xiangtian grabbed Guan Weiwu's wrist and said, no need to be so polite. Then he looked around and said, there are too many people here, let's talk inside your alchemy room. Once everyone entered, an elder placed a layer of light curtain at the door of the alchemy room, immediately blocking all the sounds outside. Naturally, the sounds inside could not be heard outside. Fortunately, Guan Weiwu's alchemy room was big enough that it was not crowded when everyone stood in it. Feng Xiangtian said to Guan Weiwu solemnly, I heard from Yang Qian that your disciple, Yu Qianqiu, solved the problem of the energy recovery pill, is it true? Guan Weiwu looked at everyone and sighed, sect leader's senior brother, it is true. Good, good, good. Feng Xiangtian hammered his palms with his fists and said good 3 times. He pointed at Guan Weiwu and said, Junior brother, your alchemy pavilion has made a great contribution to supporting Xian Island. Then, he turned around and waved at the elders, as long as my supporting Immortal Island has enough energy recovery pills, no matter what happens in the cultivation world, my supporting Immortal Island will have the upper hand. Feng Xiangtian's domineering aura of a superior was revealed as he talked. All the elders nodded. Everyone knew that although supporting Xian Island was isolated in the sea and would not take the initiative to cause any trouble, there was always an unpredictable storm in the sky. Who could guarantee that nothing would happen to supporting Xian Island? It was probably not only the demonic path that wanted to challenge the #1 sect in the cultivation world. Once a war broke out, supporting Xian Island would have enough energy recovery pills to maintain a strong fighting strength. With their tireless elites, it would be hard for them to continue fighting the enemy. Where is Yu Qianqiu? Feng Xiangtian just realized that Yu Qianqiu, who was just in front of him, was nowhere to be seen. Everyone turned around to look for him. Disciple is here. Everyone looked towards the place where the voice came from. At the corner at the back, a hand was raised, but the person was nowhere to be seen. All the elders opened up a path. "Damn it! You bunch of old fellows are here, how can I stand in front of you?" Yu Qianqiu gave everyone a simple and honest smile and jogged to the front of the sect master. Chapter 96. Feng Xiangtian looked at Yu Qianqiu with a faint smile. Speaking of which, he didn't know most of the young disciples of Fuxian Island, but this ordinary-looking Yu Qianqiu in front of him was the third time he met him. The first 2 times he met him had given him a headache, but this time, he gave him a big surprise. Seeing the long sword on Yu Qianqiu's back, Feng Xiangtian frowned as if he remembered something. He looked at Guan Weiwu and asked, "Didn't Yu Qianqiu not have a foundation building pill? How did he succeed in building his foundation?" Most of the elders didn't know about this, but when they heard the sect master's words, they all showed questioning looks. Guan Weiwu smiled bitterly and said, "I don't know what kind of dog shit luck this kid has. After staying in the mulberry grassland for a few days, he actually got Zhougu's favor and personally helped him to build his foundation." As soon as he said this, everyone's doubts were immediately resolved. No one doubted Ma Zhougu's ability, but they were curious about how Yu Qianqiu could get Ma Zhougu's favor. After a careful examination, they found that they couldn't see through his cultivation, so Ma Zhougu probably fancied his talented physique. Feng Xiangtian nodded and said, "So that's how it is." Then he changed the topic and waved his hand, "Okay, let's not talk about this. Weiwu, everyone is not here to chat, take out what everyone wants to see." Guan Weiwu nodded and took out a set of spiritual herbs from his storage bag, handing it to Yu Qianqiu and said with a smile, "Refining this qi returning pill, this master of mine is not as good as you, so don't embarrass yourself by taking it out. You can refine 1 furnace." Everyone was shocked when they heard this. Even Guan Weiwu felt inferior. How was this possible? They all looked at Yu Qianqiu in disbelief. The latter sighed inwardly, "Master. Are you trying to support me or ruin me? Don't you know that a tall tree attracts the wind? Is it so easy to be in the limelight? Words spoken are like spilled water, there is no way to take them back." Yu Qianqiu could only silently accept the order. The preheating of the alchemy furnace was ready-made. He placed the spiritual herbs into the lid of the furnace and began to refine the alchemy pills. As soon as his divine sense entered the alchemy furnace to control it, he was startled. The spirit herbs swayed and almost fell to the boiling red bottom of the furnace and were destroyed. There were more than a dozen strands of divine sense around the furnace walls. Needless to say, only those old bastards in the alchemy room would dare to do this without even telling him. Feng Xiangtian's divine sense was also inside. He turned his head to look at the people around him and frowned slightly. He transmitted his voice to Yu Qianqiu, "Yu Qianqiu, don't worry about them. Focus on refining your elixir." However, he didn't think that he was doing the same thing as the others. This was probably the shamelessness of those in power. Sigh. I wanted to be sneaky, but there were too many eyes. Yu Qianqiu nodded. He couldn't be bothered to care so much. He would just treat it as dog poop. Out of sight, out of mind, a bunch of old bastards. A wonderful performance began inside the furnace. The expressions on everyone's faces were surprise, disbelief, as if they were dreaming, intoxicated, and so on. Yan Shu, who was standing with Yang Qian, had a look of jealousy and hatred on his face. The two of them weren't qualified to participate in this grand event with the elders. After a peng sound, the elixir was formed. Everyone's gaze fell on the energy recovery elixir in Guan Weiwu's hand. Although it wasn't the first time Guan Weiwu had seen the elixir refined by Yu Qianqiu, he still couldn't help but reveal a stunned expression when he saw it again. He sighed with every step he took to the sect leader. Feng Xiangtian picked up one and looked at the faint white light on the energy recovery elixir. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, "Elixir dizziness." His face was full of disbelief. Everyone came over and took one from Guan Weiwu's hand to take a look. In the blink of an eye, there were only a few elixirs left in Guan Weiwu's hand. For a moment, exclamations rang out in the pill room. After Feng Xiangtian appraised the energy recovery elixir in his hand, he swallowed it in one gulp. After a while, he exhaled and praised, "I'm afraid even the famous pill sect thousands of years ago rarely refined such a high-grade elixir." The other elders also followed suit, swallowing the energy-returning pills in their hands to fill their stomachs. Yu Qianqiu felt a toothache when he saw this. They were really freeloading. But after eating, they finally left behind a wave of praises. "Matey, can this alchemy method be promoted in the alchemy pavilion?" Feng Xiangtian was indeed the sect leader who controlled the world's #1 sect. He was indeed outstanding in his own way. He could see the pros and cons of Yu Qianqiu's refining method with just one look. Although the elders were not proficient in alchemy, they were not completely clueless. They had never seen or heard of Yu Qianqiu's alchemy method before, so they all had the same question as the sect leader. Guan Weiwu smiled bitterly and said, "Speaking of which, it's also heaven's will. I saw that my disciple was bored, so I gave him a few sets of spiritual herbs and let him ponder on it himself. He had never refined a pill before, but who knew that by chance, he would actually come up with this unprecedented alchemy method. I've also tried using this method before. Maybe it's because my talent is poor, but I'm afraid it'll be difficult for me to imitate it in a short period of time. However, this alchemy method can be promoted in the alchemy pavilion. I've already tried it, and there have never been any cases of pills being wasted. It's just that I can't refine such a high-grade elixir." The crowd was instantly in an uproar. It was Yu Qianqiu's first time refining a pill, and even the pill addict Guan Weiwu had to admit that he was inferior to him. Furthermore, he even created an unprecedented alchemy method. If this wasn't talent, then what was? For a moment, everyone's eyes were focused on Yu Qianqiu, which made the latter feel very embarrassed. Feng Xiangtian said with slight regret, "This is already very good. Weiwu, you should arrange this matter as soon as possible." His gaze fell on Yu Qianqiu, and he asked again, "What is your disciple doing in the alchemy pavilion now?" "Currently, he's in charge of fetching spiritual herbs from the myriad fragrance garden and the alchemy pavilion," Guan Weiwu replied. Feng Xiangtian was just asking casually, and he didn't expect to hear such a reply. He couldn't help but frown, and his tone was a little unhappy. Since he has such talent, isn't it a bit of a waste to do such a thing? Could it be that the alchemy pavilion can't find a second disciple who can fetch spiritual herbs? Mighty awe. It's not that I want to criticize you, but it's a good thing for you and supporting Immortal Island to have such a talented disciple by your side to inherit your legacy." Before Guan Weiwu could speak, Ferdinand, who was standing in the crowd, stood out and said anxiously, "Sect Master, Yu Qianqiu is the person whom Elder Guan and I decided on together to fetch spiritual herbs. Moreover, we just decided on him not long ago, and he hasn't been there even once. How can he be changed so soon? His daughter was his flesh and blood." The words he said in a moment of panic were full of loopholes, and the reason was too far-fetched. All the elders looked at him as if they were looking at a monster. Feng Xiangtian looked at him from head to toe, and he said strangely, "Elder Fei, the alchemy pavilion is assigning a disciple, why are you so anxious? Could it be that changing someone to fetch spiritual herbs from your myriad fragrance garden will reduce your production of spiritual herbs? Or is there any other reason? Give me a reason that can convince me." Ferdinand's face twitched. He did say something wrong because of his daughter's anxiousness. Even if he didn't say anything wrong, how could he say the real reason? He could only change his words and said, "I'm just saying, I don't mean anything else." After saying that, he retreated. Feng Xiangtian glared at him and didn't say anything, but there was a doubt in his heart. Guan Weiwu was reprimanded by the sect master, but not only was he not angry after hearing Ferdinand's words, he was secretly happy. When Ferdinand found him that day, in order to fight for the position of delivering spiritual herbs for Yu Qianqiu, he even used the amount of spiritual herbs to threaten him. It was really infuriating. Now that he met someone who was harder to deal with, he lost his temper. Yan Shu, arrange for a new disciple to deliver the spirit herbs. Yang Qian, find a room for Yu Qianqiu to use alone. Guan Weiwu quickly implemented the sect master's suggestion. At this time, Feng Xiangtian glanced at everyone and said, "This matter is of great importance. Today's matter must not be leaked to the outside world. Otherwise, you will be severely punished, no matter who you are. In addition, my Fu Xian Island has always been clear about rewards and punishments for the disciples. Meritorious service will be rewarded, and mistakes will be punished. Yu Qianqiu has made a great contribution, so he should be rewarded. Elder Hai, you are in charge of rewards and punishments, what should we reward?" Chapter 97. After Yan Shu led the sect leader and the others away, Guan Weiwu and Yang Qian quickly summoned the nascent soul stage cultivators of the alchemy pavilion to plan on refining the qi recovery pill. As for those below the nascent soul stage, they were not included. Yu Qianqiu did not want to join in the fun anymore. His storage bag contained the 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones that Elder Hai had awarded to him in front of everyone. He went to the pill room for his own use with a happy mood. When he received the 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones that were flashing with amber light, the elder's eyes turned green. It was indeed a lot of money. He had spent more than 2,000 upper-grade spirit stones to learn alchemy some time ago. He had earned back a lot in such a short time. Touching the thick pill furnace, Yu Qianqiu was filled with emotion. No wonder in his previous life, it was said that with a skill, one could travel the world. It seemed that this saying was also very useful in the cultivation world. It was worth pondering over. Not long after, Guan Weiwu and Yang Qian came together. Without saying anything, Guan Weiwu took out a jade plate and handed it to Yu Qianqiu and said, "There are 3 pill recipes inside. You can use them for the trial. If you need any spirit herbs, just ask Yang Qian." Yang Qian nodded in agreement. Yu Qianqiu laughed and agreed. After sending his master and Yang Qian away, he took the jade plate in his hand and checked it. He sneered disdainfully and threw it into his storage bag. The 3 flavors were pill recipes to increase vitality and cultivation. If it was not to verify the pill recipes on the jade plate, was it necessary for him to refine the qi recovery pill? Since it was proven useful, did he still want to contribute to the supporting Immortal Island? No way. I was going to create the world's #1 sect to play with. If I give you all the good stuff, what will I use in the future? If I want to contribute, I will do it for myself. I don't care about a mere 1,000 upper-grade spirit stones. Thinking of Ferdinand's sad eyes before he left, Yu Qianqiu felt a little guilty. He had lived with his daughter for so long. It was not right for him to leave just like that. Find some time. Find some time to see that ugly girl as much as possible. At present, the most important thing was to improve his cultivation. Mice sword kinesis flight. Now that he had a lot of time, it was time to focus on his cultivation. Yu Qianqiu shook his head as he looked at the busy figures in the underground alchemy room. Who were they working hard for? For whom? He absolutely could not end up like them. He swayed as he walked out of the underground space and out of the main hall. He specifically walked over to the side of the disciple who had yet to reach Foundation establishment. After picking up quite a few, Marshal Uncle Yu, he walked down the mountain. Standing next to the alchemy pavilion, Yan Shu watched the figure go down the mountain with an uncontrollable anger on his face. He remembered what his father told him after the other elders left. That's right, Yu Qianqiu. You can't act recklessly now. He is now in the eyes of the sect leader and the elders. At least for now, you can't act recklessly. There will always be a chance. Yan Shu took a deep breath, exhaled, and walked to the side. On the way to the cultivation pavilion, Yu Qianqiu really wanted to find a mirror to look at himself in an ancient costume with a long sword on his back. He wanted to see if he had the demeanor of a hero. Unfortunately, he did not get what he wanted. With the jade disc he obtained when he was rectifying his name, he once again passed through the protective array of the cultivation pavilion. Looking at the figure flying in the sky in front of him, Yu Qianqiu's blood boiled. He hurried to find the sutra pavilion that he had dreamed of for a long time. There were many buildings hidden among the green mountains, but which one was the sutra pavilion? He visited many of them one by one, but they were all turned away by the guards as if they were looking at a rookie. He stopped a lot of passers-by, but they either looked at him coldly or didn't even bother to talk to him. He finally understood how heartless the cultivation world was. Yu Qianqiu clenched his teeth. For the great cause of cultivation, I'll endure it. He completely displayed the tireless spirit of a Yihong brothel fan. He leaned against a tree on the side of a path and looked around, unwilling to give up. Finally, an extraordinarily handsome young man walked over from the opposite direction. Yu Qianqiu pulled himself together. Damn it! I can't always put on a begging attitude. He raised his hand and said, "Junior apprentice brother, come here for a moment." The handsome young man stopped and looked at Yu Qianqiu. He was slightly startled. He carefully examined him, but couldn't see through his cultivation. He walked over and bowed. "What business does senior apprentice brother have with me? Damn it! This person is so cheap." As expected, it's still effective. Yu Qianqiu lazily got up from the tree and said expressionlessly, "Junior apprentice brother, I want to ask you something. Where is the Sutra Pavilion? If it's not troublesome, can you take me there?" The young man was startled, then he laughed and shook his head. "Which branch are you from? You don't even know where the Sutra Pavilion is. You're clearly a newcomer who just entered Foundation building. I'm in the middle stage of core formation, yet you dare to pretend to be my senior apprentice brother. You've got guts." Yu Qianqiu didn't think that his casual words would be seen through. He silently scolded himself for being stupid. How could he make such a low-level mistake? However, he didn't think he was that easy to fool. Looking at the young man's appearance, he didn't look like he was in the middle stage of core formation. He said with a cold face, "Junior apprentice brother, what do you mean by that?" The handsome young man couldn't be bothered to talk nonsense with him. He pointed with 2 fingers and the sword on his back shot out with a clang. It floated in the air and glared at Yu Qianqiu. The young man smiled and said, "Nothing. Since you dare to pretend to be my senior apprentice brother, then I'd like to ask senior apprentice brother for some advice. Let's see if you, a fake senior apprentice brother, can beat my junior apprentice brother." Damn. He's serious. I'm just an early-stage foundation building cultivator who doesn't know anything. Fighting a middle-stage core formation cultivator like me, isn't that courting death? Yu Qianqiu's expression instantly changed. He laughed and said respectfully, "Martial uncle's discerning eyes are like a torch. Sure enough, this little trick of mine can't fool you. Disciple was just joking. Senior, don't be angry, don't be angry." As he spoke, he carefully guarded against the 3-feet-long sword in the air that was pointed at him. The handsome young man hesitated for a moment. He stretched out 2 fingers and clenched them into a fist again. After his sword returned to its sheath, he smiled and said, "You're quite interesting. You're just asking for directions, yet you have to place so many tricks. Which branch are you from? What's your name?" After his little trick was exposed, Yu Qianqiu replied honestly, "Disciple Yu Qianqiu." I'm from the Alchemy Pavilion. The handsome young man said, "Oh, so you're a disciple from the Alchemy Pavilion. You've just reached Foundation Establishment and want to go to the Scripture Pavilion, right?" "Yes, yes, Martial Uncle is wise. You guessed it right," Yu Qianqiu said respectfully. "We're all disciples of Fuxian Island, so I won't make things difficult for you. I'll show you the way to the Scripture Pavilion. How about this, give me a top-grade spirit stone first and I'll tell you." The handsome young man smiled and stared at his storage bag. Ah! Yu Qianqiu's face twitched. He wanted to slap himself. Not only did he fail to trick people, he was also being blackmailed. He had to give someone a top-grade spirit stone for nothing. But the situation was stronger than him. He took out an amber spirit stone unwillingly and gave it to the young man respectfully. The young man got the spirit stone and glanced at his storage bag. He looked at the spirit stone in his hand and said, "I see that you're not willing to give me the spirit stone. If this gets out, they'll say that I'm blackmailing a junior. It's not worth tarnishing my reputation for a spirit stone. How about this? Why don't you give me another top-grade spirit stone? That way, it's worth my reputation. If you're not willing, I'll return this spirit stone to you and we can fight to our heart's content. That way, we'll be more comfortable. What do you think?" As he spoke, the two fingers on his other hand were already moving. He wanted to shoot out a sword art. The threat was very strong. Chapter 98. F***CK. Gigolo, you're too F***King evil. If I asked for it just now, then you're clearly extorting me in broad daylight. You have guts. Today, I will pay the price to avoid disaster. Yu Qianqiu calmly took out another high-quality spirit stone. He knew that it would be even more disgusting if he continued to pester him, so he quickly handed it over. "At least you know your place." The young man took the spirit stone and snorted. He pointed at a small path in the distance and said, "Kid, follow that path and you will reach the Sutra Pavilion. Remember, don't overestimate yourself next time." Disciple knows his mistake. "May I ask Martial Uncle's name so that disciple will remember your teachings?" Yu Qianqiu was a flexible person. "What? From your tone, you still remember this grudge?" The young man glanced at him coldly. He flicked his two fingers and the sword was unsheathed. A cold light brushed past Yu Qianqiu's forehead. The latter was so scared that he took a step back. The young man jumped up and landed on the sword. He sneered, "If you want revenge, remember my name. I am Gu Qingyun, disciple of the Cultivation Pavilion." A gust of wind blew and the sword flew into the distance. "That fellow is interesting, there's a hint of evil in him. Gu Qingyun, I'll remember you." Yu Qianqiu rubbed his nose and stared at the silhouette of Qin Wendian. Not only was he not angry, he actually laughed. He turned around and walked in the direction Gu Qingyun pointed. The Scripture Pavilion was a place guarded by the Cultivation Pavilion, so it was naturally not an ordinary place. It contained all kinds of ancient books that had been collected by the supporting Immortal Island for thousands of years. Yu Qianqiu had long heard of this place. It was known as the place with the richest collection of books in the entire cultivation world. There was a saying that as long as there were books in the Sutra Pavilion, the island would be able to stand tall in the cultivation world. Yu Qianqiu deeply agreed with this saying. Just like the country in his previous life, as long as the cultural heritage of the country was passed down, no external forces would be able to destroy it. Instead, the more hardships it went through, the more it would shine in the world. Even if a country fell apart or declined, there would always be people who could carry on the legacy and rebuild the old country. This was the unique charm of cultural heritage, the charm of being able to last for a long time. Yu Qianzhou had once deeply loved that piece of land. Even though she had her faults, he still loved it without any regrets. That love was deeply engraved in his soul. Even if he reincarnated into this life, he would never forget it. In the basin surrounded by mountains, there was a building that occupied an immeasurable area. It was almost 200 feet tall and exuded a simple and unadorned charm. It stood there quietly, narrating the vicissitudes of life it had experienced. Walking to the main entrance of the building, Xiao Chen raised his head and saw a huge stone plaque hanging at a height of more than 10 meters. On it were the words, Sutra Pavilion, in gold. Yu Qianzhou walked up the stairs. A middle-aged man with a sturdy physique flashed past the door. He blocked Yu Qianzhou's way with a cold expression and pointed at the wooden box beside the door. Yu Qianzhou had already inquired about the rules here. Storage bags were not allowed in, so he had already put them away in the golden bead. He nodded and threw a high-grade spirit stone in his hand. The middle-aged man immediately stepped aside. Anyone who entered the Sutra Pavilion to read the ancient books would have to pay a high-grade spirit stone. Compared to ordinary cultivators, it was indeed too expensive. The treatment of the supporting Immortal Island's disciples was not bad, but it was equivalent to half a year's allowance for a Foundation Establishment disciple. Many disciples who had just reached Foundation Establishment would borrow spirit stones to enter. Yu Qianzhou also knew that the supporting Immortal Island was not trying to earn money from the disciples. The higher the price was actually a way to protect the ancient books in the Sutra Pavilion. It was to prevent some disciples from entering the Sutra Pavilion. Of course, those who were elders and above could enter for free. After entering the door, he only took a few steps before he was blocked by a layer of light screen. Disciples who were not Foundation Establishment cultivators could not enter. Yu Qianzhou circulated his quintessential essence and stepped in with difficulty. The first floor of the staircase was another layer of light screen. That was a place that only core formation cultivators could enter. He did not have the ability to do so. He turned and walked towards the main hall of the first floor. After passing through a door, he saw a rather big space. There were many wooden boxes hanging at shoulder height. Precious ancient books were stored inside. There were already many people who had arrived before him. A few steps ahead, there was a wooden board with some rules to follow written on it. After Yu Qianzhou took a look, he first walked around and noticed that there were people sitting cross-legged at the side. They did not look like Foundation Establishment disciples. They were probably the people guarding the ancient books in the Sutra Pavilion. Naturally, they were afraid that someone would steal the ancient books. Yu Qianzhou really did have that intention. Seeing that the security was tight, he could only give up and see if there would be a chance in the future. He began to look for the things he wanted in the boxes one by one. The wooden boxes were all marked with what was stored inside. Soon, he found the Imperial Sword technique that he needed in the early Foundation Establishment realm area. He opened the wooden box and found a jade disc inside. He immediately injected his divine sense into it to check. He discovered that the things recorded inside were different from what he saw in the jade disc. They were all fixed with a special method. It was impossible to destroy or tamper with the contents inside. These weren't the things he cared about. The main thing was the content inside. After reading through the nearly 10,000 words, Yu Qianzhou felt a bit of a headache. He couldn't bring this thing out, and he couldn't cultivate here either. Didn't that mean he had to forcefully memorize it? Only now did he realize that one high-grade spirit stone per person to enter the Sutra Pavilion was a little too expensive. It seemed like he had to forcefully memorize it here. However, he did not know that this was the brilliance of Fuxian Island. They were afraid that their disciples would bite off more than they could chew. It was no wonder that Fuxian Island had such a messy seniority system. Almost no one accepted disciples. All the cultivation techniques were open to the public and were not reserved. Anyone could cultivate it. As long as you had the talent, you could be stronger than others. You could even be someone's martial uncle or grandmaster. Of course, people like Guan Weiwu who had their own special skills were an exception. There were also some extremely talented people who created their own techniques and were not willing to make it public. They would also accept disciples to pass it on. When Yu Qianzhou confirmed that he had memorized the imperial sword technique of nearly 10,000 words, 2 days had passed. Other than cursing in his heart, there was no other way. He wanted to steal it, but he could always feel a faintly discernible gaze staring at him. Originally, he had not eaten well for a few days. In addition to these 2 days, his stomach was groaning. After all, he had not reached the core formation realm and could not eat. Under the vigilant gaze of the inspector, he put the jade disc back to its original place and left. After leaving the Sutra Pavilion and the Cultivation Pavilion, he returned to his courtyard and the Alchemy Pavilion without stopping. He closed the door and hid in his room. His divine sense locked onto Jin Zhu and wanted to return to Utopia. Suddenly, his body trembled. He retracted his divine sense and rubbed his eyes in disbelief. Was it an illusion? Just now, when his divine sense locked onto Jin Zhu, he could see the scene in Utopia. Yu Qianzhou locked his divine sense on Jin Zhu again. The scene in Utopia was vivid in his mind. It was as if he was looking down at the entire land from a high altitude. Other than the endless purple chaos around him, everything in Utopia was in front of him. The newly appeared mountain and the deep ravine in the middle were all things he had seen in the sky previously. Could it be because he had reached the Foundation Establishment realm? In order to confirm his guess, Yu Qianzhou was stunned. He moved his divine sense slightly, and the bamboo house that had been destroyed and surrounded by green trees appeared in front of him. How? How was this possible? He moved his divine sense again. Guan Yu and Chen Feng were reorganizing the sea of flowers. His sister was standing with the broken red rabbit, looking into the distance with a gentle and moving expression. It was pitiful. Yu Qianzhou could not help but use his divine sense to approach and call out in his mind, "Sister." Bai Suzhen turned around in a daze, but she did not discover anything. She looked around and said, "Brother, are you back?" "Ah!" Yu Qianzhou screamed in fright and retracted his divine sense. He took a few steps back in the room and stammered, "Sis. Sister, you can hear me. How is this possible?" Chapter 99. After the shock, Yu Qianzhou calmed himself down and locked onto Jin Zhu with his divine sense again. He successfully entered Utopia and quickly scanned the area. Everywhere his divine sense went, the scenes he saw were all like he was there. It was obvious that it was not an illusion. After his cultivation entered the Foundation Establishment stage, his relationship with Jin Zhu had changed further. Yu Qianzhou's divine sense was like the ruler of this space, patrolling his great rivers and mountains. Then, his divine sense instantly locked onto Bai Suzhen's side. He saw that her peerless face was still filled with deep doubt as she looked around from time to time. Yu Qianzhou glanced at Guan Yu and Chen Feng in the distance and fell into deep thought. A moment later, he called out affectionately in Bai Suzhen's ear, "Sister." The latter looked around vigilantly. "Sister, I'm Yu Qianzhou. Don't worry and don't speak. I have something to tell you." Yu Qianzhou explained the use of divine sense that he had just discovered through his divine sense. Bai Suzhen's doubts were instantly resolved, and her expression returned to normal. "Sister, do you know? In the cultivation world, I can only be completely sure that there are 2 people who treat me well. When I first stepped into the cultivation world, the first person I met who treated me well was my master, Hao Sansi. Unfortunately, I only understood it after he died. And the second person is you, sister. Master is dead, so you're the only person I can entrust everything to in the cultivation world, including my life. I couldn't bear the loneliness in the surging world of mortals and heartless cultivators, so I stepped into it. Since I've already walked this path, I don't want to stop so quickly. Elder sister, please allow me to continue. Having elder sister by my side is the most gratifying thing of my life. I only hope that one day when I can't continue or when I'm tired, I can hug elder sister and sleep peacefully. Elder sister, can you understand how I feel? Yu Qianqiu indifferently said. After a moment of silence, Bai Suzhen nodded lightly. Her face blossomed with a beauty that no one had ever seen before, a beauty that was unrestrained. 1,000 years of bitter cultivation was not for the great Tao, but for a walk in the human world. He cultivated as a demon and became a human, but a demon in his heart followed him like a shadow, and he could not get rid of the shackles of the word demon. The dream of the mandarin duck and butterfly 200 years ago had caused his heart to be locked up, and he had resented himself for coming to this world. Now that he could hear Yu Qianqiu's words, the nightmare had disappeared, and his heart had a place to belong. So what if he was a human or a demon? To have a bosom friend for thousands of years, what was there to be worried about? Accompany him. After Yu Qianqiu finished speaking to Bai Suzhen, the image of Chu Ping flashed across his mind. He sighed to himself. I hope she's someone who I can entrust everything to. But his heart, which had been corroded by the darkness in his previous life, found it hard to trust someone completely. Sister, I'll beg you to return Guan Yu and Chen Feng's natal primordial spirits to them later, Yu Qianqiu suddenly said. Bai Suzhen nodded calmly. But I hope you won't agree, Yu Qianqiu said again. Bai Suzhen was stunned, and a hint of resentment flashed across her face. She was intelligent, so how could she not understand her brother's thoughts? He had just said something nice, and now he wanted his sister to be the bad guy while he was the good guy. Was there such a despicable person? But she still nodded. I have one more request, sister. Yu Qianqiu said coldly, anyone who comes to our utopia in the future, as long as I haven't informed you, please collect their natal primordial spirits. Bai Suzhen nodded in agreement and sighed. It seemed like her brother's ambition was not small. Boss is here, Chen Feng, who was planting flowers, suddenly called out in joy. Guan Yu stood up as well. Yu Qianqiu grinned as he appeared beside Bai Suzhen. Bai Suzhen couldn't help but roll her eyes at him. However, Yu Qianqiu acted as if nothing had happened and waved at his two subordinates. Guan Yu and Chen Feng quickly ran over. I haven't had a drop of water for the past 2 days. I've memorized nearly 10,000 words of the sword manipulation technique. They're all here. Yu Qianqiu pointed at his head and said to the two of them, go get me something to eat. I'll record it for you too. He took out 2 blank jade archives from his storage pouch and waved them in front of the two of them. Guan Yu and Chen Feng nodded excitedly and immediately ran off to hunt. I want to eat roasted pheasant, Yu Qianqiu did not forget to remind them. He held a jade archive in each hand and concentrated on recording the sword manipulation technique that he had memorized in his mind. He already knew about this recording technique when he was still in Ongquangsang. Unfortunately, he had yet to reach foundation establishment and his divine sense was not strong enough. Today was his first time using it, so he wondered how effective it would be. After recording it, he infused his divine sense into it to examine it. As expected, it was not a difficult task. While waiting for their food, Bai Suzhen asked for the jade archive containing the pill formula and unlocked the last 3 layers of restrictions on it. She also asked for a jade archive to record all the insights she had on formations and gave it to Yu Qianqiu. Guan Yu and Chen Feng each carried a jar of wine and a roasted pheasant and gave them to Boss. The latter returned the 2 jade archives containing the sword manipulation technique. After Yu Qianqiu had filled their stomachs with wine and meat, the 3 of them could not wait to start cultivating. For those who had already reached foundation establishment, sword manipulation flight was not a difficult task. The three of them spent less than half a day to master it. What was difficult was controlling the sword to defend against enemies. Without putting in a lot of effort, it would not be easy to succeed. Seeing that they would not be able to master it in a short period of time, Yu Qianqiu asked Bai Suzhen for their natal primordial divinities in front of Guan Yu and Chen Feng. Bai Suzhen said expressionlessly, "I have my own plans. There's no need for you to nag." She then floated away. Yu Qianqiu smiled bitterly. On the other hand, Guan Yu and Chen Feng came over to comfort him. They told him not to worry too much and that Sister Bai would never have any ill intentions towards them. He could only shake his head and give up, apologizing profusely to the two of them. The two of them had just received the sword manipulation technique and were in high spirits. On top of that, it was all thanks to him that they were able to achieve what they had today, so the two of them comforted him again and again. After putting on a show, Yu Qianqiu did not linger. When he returned to his room, he saw Ling Feng and the others the moment he opened the door. The three of them did not expect Yu Qianqiu to be in his room. They all stood up. In their minds, Yu Qianqiu was someone who did not return often. Who knew what he was busy with all day long? Yu Qianqiu's mind was preoccupied with other matters. He was not in the mood to chat with them. He waved at them in greeting, drew the sword manipulation technique out of its sheath, and leaped into the air. The three of them were left dumbstruck in the courtyard, reminiscing endlessly. Back then, the four of them were all at the 10th level of the Qi refining realm. Now, the difference between them was like heaven and earth. No matter how virtuous the three of them were, they could not help but feel bitter in their mouths. Yu Qianqiu went straight to the sutra depository on his sword. After he entered, he was not interested in the other messy ancient books. He only opened the boxes that contained various techniques. He had already discussed it with Bai Suzhen. He would use his divine sense to inform her as he read in the sutra depository, and Bai Suzhen would record them down one by one in the bamboo house. It did not matter if it was useful or not. As long as it was a cultivation technique, she would take it all. His abnormal behavior attracted the attention of the Sutra Depository's guard. Other disciples would need to memorize a technique for a long time after they found one, but he only looked through them quickly. After he finished reading one, he immediately switched to another. However, that was all. He did not do anything that violated the rules. The guard could only conclude that he was looking for a technique. Chapter 100. In the dark and bottomless canyon, a stream of light shot out. Yu Qianqiu landed on the peak of the mountain. His long sword circled around his body and returned to its sheath. A smile appeared on his lips as he muttered, "I didn't expect there to be earth fire here. It's a good place to refine pills." His gaze rested on a boulder on the opposite cliff. He nodded slightly and clasped his palms together. He straightened his 4 fingers into 2 pairs and placed them between his eyebrows. With a thought, the long sword on his back was unsheathed with a chonk sound. 2 rays of cold light shot out from his storage pouch. In an instant, 3 long swords circled around his body. Go! Yu Qianqiu let out a light shout, and his 4 fingers stabbed toward the huge rock on the opposite cliff. The 3 long swords that were circling around his body turned into 3 cold beams of light and shot out. Bang! 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 A series of noises resounded, and the huge rock was shrouded in dust and smoke. The 3 cold beams of light were like beautiful maidens shuttling back and forth, and they took turns to flash in and out of the dust and smoke. The broken pieces of the huge rock fell into the bottomless valley. Return. He clenched his fists and the 3 beams of cold light shot out of the dust and returned to their original positions. After the dust on the opposite peak was blown away by the mountain wind, Yu Qianqiu focused his gaze and his facial muscles twitched slightly. There were 3 big words, Utopia, engraved on the huge rock. Although it was imposing, it was the kind of big words. However, it was a little crooked and not neat. Sigh. An artifact is indeed an artifact. If I had 3 magic treasure level long swords, it wouldn't affect my performance. Yu Qianqiu looked at the 3 big words opposite him and shook his head. A year ago, he picked a set of Guiyuan sword technique from the many skills he got from the Sutra Pavilion. The reason why he liked it was that after mastering it, he could control multiple swords at the same time to defend against enemies. As his cultivation level increased, the number of swords he could control would also increase. After reading the incantation, Bai Suzhen advised him, "I've never seen this kind of sword incantation, but it seems to be of little value. It's not powerful enough to defend against enemies, so it's not suitable for people in the cultivation world to practice. It's better to change to a more powerful incantation." Yu Qianqiu did not think much of it. In his previous life, when he was involved in group fights, he concluded that the more punches you have, the more experienced you are. Therefore, when he saw this sword technique, he felt that it was fate. He refused. "Sister, didn't you read the sword technique? The higher the cultivation of the person controlling the sword, the higher the grade of the sword, and the greater the power. This principle applies to any sword technique," Bai Suzhen said in annoyance. Seeing that her brother was still indifferent, she was too lazy to say anything more. Some people would only turn back after suffering a loss. Seeing that Bai Suzhen was a little angry, Yu Qianqiu was also a little hesitant. When he returned to supporting Immortal Island, he asked around, but he really did not hear of anyone practicing it. He also did not know which generation of disciples had collected it from outside, but after it was stored in the Sutra Pavilion, no one had practiced it. The reason was just like what his sister had said, it was not powerful enough. Most of the disciples of Supporting Immortal Island practiced the Supporting Immortal sword technique passed down from their own sect, and its power was not ordinary. Guan Yu had stayed on Supporting Immortal Island before, and after persuading Chen Feng, the 2 of them practiced this sword technique. However, for some reason, Yu Qianqiu was a little reluctant to give up. Perhaps it was fate. He clenched his teeth and decided to continue practicing. In a year, the 3 of them broke through to the middle stage of foundation building. This kind of cultivation speed would be shocking if it was known, but it was all thanks to Yu Qianqiu. When they had just reached the early stage of foundation building, the 3 of them finally got rid of the pain of not daring to casually absorb spirit qi when they were at the 10th level of qi refinement. Piles of spirit stones naturally became their target for absorption. However, after absorbing and refining a top-grade spirit stone into their dantian, they did not know whether to laugh or cry. Although it was not as exaggerated as a drop in the ocean, it was more or less the same. Spirit stones were helpful, but not very much. They did not know how many years it would take for them to increase their cultivation. The only shortcut was elixirs. The solution to this problem naturally fell on Yu Qianqiu. After refining a few cauldrons of vitality pills with the elixir house's spirit herbs, the effect was really very good, but this was not a long-term solution. It was unreasonable to always use the elixir house's spirit herbs but not give any elixirs to the elixir house. In the end, he turned his attention to hibiscus in the 10,000 fragrance garden. When he had nothing to do, he would go to the 10,000 fragrance garden and chat with hibiscus, causing hibiscus to look for him every day. Then, he instigated hibiscus to ask Ferdinand for the spirit herb seeds. Today, she would ask for this kind of spirit herb seed, and tomorrow, she would ask for that kind of spirit herb seed. This kind of thing naturally could not be hidden from Ferdinand. Although it was against the sect's rules, Ferdinand had always turned a blind eye to it. As long as his daughter was happy, it was fine. He kept bringing all kinds of spiritual herb seeds to Utopia, causing Guan Yu and Chen Feng to be filled with admiration. These were spiritual herb seeds that were treated as treasures in the cultivation world, not weed seeds. However, Boss could casually bring them over one by one every 2 or 3 days. They had no choice but to be impressed. At the very least, they did not have the ability to do so. With the seeds and the purple chaos, the spirit herb was naturally not a problem. Subsequently, Yu Qianqiu often went to the elixir house to greet his master regularly, then stayed in his own elixir house for a period of time. After living like this for a period of time, he asked for all the seeds in the 10,000 fragrance garden. In the end, Hibiscus could not take out any other spirit herb seeds, and Yu Qianqiu also went to concentrate on cultivation without any conscience. This made Ferdinand so angry that he kept yelling. He found an excuse to go to the elixir house many times, but he could not find Yu Qianqiu. Dong! There was a loud noise. Yu Qianqiu, who was standing on the top of the mountain, faintly felt some vibration under his feet. He frowned slightly and turned to look at a figure at the foot of the mountain. He drew his sword and went there. Chen Feng, who was at the foot of the mountain, was laughing wildly. When he saw Yu Qianqiu coming, he waved and smiled. "Boss, it's done." Yu Qianqiu landed on the ground and looked around. He saw a huge rock that was several meters in size lying there, but it was now broken into a pile. Looking at the traces, it was obviously destroyed by an external force. At this moment, Guan Yu flew over from the other side of the mountain. When he landed, he looked at the broken rocks and said in surprise, "Chen Feng, your shield-breaking talisman is made." Chen Feng said proudly, "My Chen family's ancestral talisman craftsmanship is not an undeserved reputation. If it wasn't for the limitation of my cultivation, I would definitely let you guys see the power of talisman Dao." When he was being arrogant, he suddenly saw Yu Qianqiu staring at him indifferently. His voice suddenly became hoarse. He was still a little afraid of this boss. Yu Qianqiu was just curious. During this period of time, under his supervision, Chen Feng began to pick up the old family craftsmanship to cultivate. Since then, he could often hear him boasting about how his Chen family's ancestral talisman craftsmanship was. He did not look like he was talking nonsense, but why had he never heard of a family that was proficient in talisman craftsmanship in the cultivation world with the surname Qin? Seeing that this talisman had such great power, it should be good for self-defense. Yu Qianqiu casually said, "Chen Feng, make me 10 of these shield-breaking talismans." "Ah." Chen Feng touched his storage bag with a troubled expression. This bag was given to him by his boss. He took out a dozen blank talisman papers and took out a few darker colored ones. He said, "Boss, there are only these few talisman papers that can make shield-breaking talismans. I really can't make 10. After saying that, he felt a little embarrassed. What storage bag, foundation building pills, vitality pills, and all kinds of spells. Boss had given him everything, but in the end, he couldn't even take out a few talismans. "Oh, then make as many as you have. It's better than nothing. Also, list out the materials that you need to craft talismans in detail. I'll see if I can get some." Yu Qianqiu thought about it and said. Chen Feng nodded and said, "Boss, I understand." Yu Qianqiu didn't say anything else. He disappeared in front of the two of them. When he returned to his room, he opened the door and saw Ling Feng and the other two eating in the courtyard. When the three of them saw him, they stood up and bowed. "Master's Uncle Yu." Although Yu Qianqiu often told them not to call him that, he gave the three of them a feeling of distance. They were still in the same place. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand, signaling them to continue eating and not to care about him. He walked out of the courtyard. Ling Feng said behind him, "Master's Uncle Yu, yesterday, Elder Fei of Wanfen Garden came to look for you again. He told me to inform you to go to Wanfen Garden when I see you." "Got it," Yu Qianqiu said without turning his head. In his heart, he thought, coincidentally, I'm a little hungry. Going to Wanfen Garden is a good time. The long sword shot out and carried him away. The three people in the courtyard looked at Yu Qianqiu fly away with envy. They had been on supporting Immortal Island for so many years, but they had never seen someone who lived so carefree. A Foundation establishment disciple didn't need to do any work. He played all day long and no one could see him. Many people in the Alchemy Pavilion had opinions about him, but the strange thing was that none of the elders in the Alchemy Pavilion interfered. Even people like Yan Shu turned a blind eye to it. Also, the principal elder of Wanfen Garden came to invite him every other day, but he always ignored her. It was really strange. Ah! Bai Zi let out a dry howl and covered her face with her hands. When will I be able to live like him? Damn, it's even better than the sect leader. Chapter 101. Hey! Yu Qianqiu stopped in the air and looked in the direction of the cultivation pavilion. He saw hundreds of people flying in the sky. It was the first time he saw so many people in supporting Xian Island at once. He stopped the impulse to go and take a look. He shook his head and thought, anyway, it has nothing to do with me. I will ask Old Man Fei later. Other than the Alchemy Pavilion, the Myriad Fragrance Garden was the place that Yu Qianqiu was most familiar with on supporting Immortal Island. When the disciples outside the main hall saw that it was Yu Qianqiu, they didn't even try to stop him. They only glanced at him before withdrawing their gazes. Yu Qianqiu swaggered in as if he was returning to his own home. Three female disciples of different ages stood in front of Ferdinand, who was sitting in the middle of the hall. He seemed to be explaining something to them. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, Ferdinand's face was a little gloomy. He waved at the three of them and said, "You can leave first." The three of them left. Yu Qianqiu knew the three of them. He nodded at them when he passed by them, but he found that the three of them didn't look very good. He walked to the middle and casually bowed, "Elder Fei." Then he touched his stomach and said, "Elder Fei, do you have anything to eat here? I haven't eaten for a few days." He said this casually. "Humph. What do you think my Wanfen garden is? I don't have anything for you to eat here." Ferdinand gritted his teeth. When he saw Yu Qianqiu, he was full of anger. Every time this guy came, he would either cheat his daughter or get something. If he couldn't get anything, he would get something to eat. In short, Wanfen Garden had become his kitchen. At present, this hooligan simply wouldn't go to the temple if he didn't have something to eat. When he was looking for him, he couldn't find him. When he was hungry, he would come by himself. Don't you think it's infuriating? Yu Qianqiu scratched his head and said, "So it's like this. I'm very hungry. I will find something to eat first. This disciple will leave first." After he said this, he turned around and left without hesitation. The muscles on Ferdinand's face twitched. There were signs of an explosion. Yu Qianqiu. Furong, who heard the commotion, dashed out from the back of the hall and shouted. She was holding the cheapest storage pouch given by Yu Qianqiu in her hand as she hurried over. "Ha! Senior sister. Why are you here?" Yu Qianqiu turned around and said in surprise. He had this expression every time, and Ferdinand hated it very much. Furong nodded and asked weakly, "Are you leaving?" Sigh. "There's nothing I can do about it. You don't know how busy and tired I am at the Alchemy Pavilion. Senior sister, I haven't eaten for a few days. I'm going to find a place to fill my stomach. I'll come back to play with senior sister later." Yu Qianqiu waved goodbye. Wait, Furong said anxiously. "Senior sister, if there's anything, can you wait until I'm full first?" Yu Qianqiu also felt a little wronged. I. Furong didn't know what to say. She turned her head and looked at Ferdinand timidly. When the latter saw that Yu Qianqiu was lying to his daughter again, his face was full of anger. The beard on his chin moved even though there was no wind. When he suddenly saw his daughter's tangled face and pitiful eyes looking at him as if asking for help, Ferdinand's anger disappeared. His heart was broken. He waved his hand weakly and said, "Take him to the back to eat something." In fact, with Ferdinand's cultivation at the early stage of tribulation passing, he didn't need to eat the 5 grains of the secular world. However, his daughter hadn't reached the core formation stage yet, so she still needed to eat. Therefore, he specially asked someone to buy all kinds of delicious food. However, his daughter rarely ate them. At the sight of her thin and weak body, Ferdinand's heart was filled with endless remorse. In the rear hall of the main hall, Hibiscus acted like she was presenting a treasure. She filled the table with the food that Ferdinand had asked someone to buy. Yu Qianqiu unceremoniously grabbed them and stuffed them into his mouth. He kept mumbling, "Delicious, delicious. Wow! I've eaten that before. It's the roast duck from China's capital Guangxi. I haven't eaten it for a long time. Senior sister, please help me bring it over." Yu Qianqiu stuffed a piece of foie gras in his mouth and pointed at the roast duck with a drumstick. Furong obediently brought it over. When Ferdinand, who was sitting at the side, saw Yu Qianqiu eating like that, he felt a little distressed. These were all things that he bought for his daughter to eat, but Yu Qianqiu looked like he wouldn't stop until he finished eating. Yu Qianqiu occasionally glanced at him and thought, "Old thing, you forced me to help your daughter carry feces for more than a year. Now, I'm here to collect interest. It'll be a waste if I don't eat." He grabbed a pot of wine and gulped at the mouth of the pot, bringing the food in his mouth into his stomach. Suddenly, he was stunned and said, "Senior sister, don't just watch me eat. You eat too." As he was speaking, he tore off a duck drumstick and handed it over. "Senior sister, I won't be happy if I don't finish it." Furong nodded obediently. She took the drumstick with her slender hands and started to nibble it carefully. Every time at this moment, Ferdinand would look at Yu Qianqiu with a calmer gaze. Whether these words were meant to deceive his daughter or not, at least it was a white lie that was beneficial to his daughter's health. "Elder Ferdinand, when I came just now, I saw hundreds of people from the Pavilion of Cultivation flying out of Fuxian Island together. Did something happen outside the island?" Yu Qianqiu was good at grasping the timing of the question. He knew that this was the time when Ferdinand was least disgusted with him. Furong bit the duck drumstick with her slender teeth and looked curiously at her father, who she had never called father before. It seemed that she was also waiting for his answer. Anyway, as long as it was a topic that Yu Qianqiu brought from outside, she was very interested to know. This was because she was never willing to get in touch with others. Yu Qianqiu was an exception. Ferdinand subconsciously looked at his daughter's ruined face and said in a deep voice, "It's all because of Ong Guangcang." "Ong Guangcang?" Yu Qianqiu asked. He found that Furong had almost finished eating the duck, so he casually picked up a pig trotter and handed it over. He said, "There are only bones left. Don't eat it. Eat this." Since he was full, he was in the mood to invite others to eat. Furong put down the bone in her hand and took the pig trotter to eat slowly. She was still listening to the conversation between the two. Suddenly, she found that the thing in her hand was not easy to eat, but she still bit it carefully. As long as it was something that Yu Qianqiu told her to eat, she would eat it no matter how disgusting it was. Ferdinand paused for a while and said, "Ong Guangcang took the lead and organized a demon-slaying conference. He pulled in some small sects and made trouble everywhere. He kept killing people from the diabolism. In the end, he killed the grandson of the great elder of the Blood Demon Palace. The Blood Demon Palace is the second big sect in the diabolism. Even when compared to the 10,000 demons, they are not much inferior. How would they be afraid of the *T demon-slaying conference that Onkwangsung organized? In a fit of anger, half of the Blood Demon Palace dispatched people. They destroyed 7 to 8 orthodox sects and even attacked Onkwangsung. Fortunately, Onkwangsung is not an ordinary sect that is outwardly strong but inwardly weak. There are quite a few experts hidden inside, and they actually withstood the attack. For the time being, the Blood Demon Palace's plan couldn't be carried out. However, they also couldn't hold on for long. When they heard that the opponent was going to send more people over, Onkwangsung also panicked. As a matter of fact, they came to our Fuxian Island under the guise of asking for help. Regarding the demon-slaying conference, Yu Qianqiu had heard Yan Zixia mention it before. However, he didn't expect that Onkwangsung would actually make such a big fuss. His heart was a little confused. Chu Ping was still in Onkwangsung. He hurriedly asked, did those people who went out from the cultivation pavilion go to Onkwangsung to help? Chapter 102. Ferdinand nodded and said, that's right. Who told our Fuxian Island to bear the name of the #1 righteous path? It's not good to refuse the joint request of people of the same path. We have already sent 100 people to stabilize the situation. The people of our Fuxian Island sent news that this time, Onkwangsung has caused too much damage to the demonic path. Even the 10,000 demons is a bit restless, so the sect sent another 500 people, mainly because we are worried that our people will be at a disadvantage in case of an emergency, so we have to prepare in advance. Yu Qianqiu asked, Onkwangsung has suffered a big loss this time, right? The loss is not small. Ferdinand sneered. He was probably laughing at Onkwangsung for overestimating himself. Yu Qianqiu was concerned about Chu Ping. After thinking for a while, he asked, I'm afraid that most of the losses are disciples with low cultivation like us, right? After saying that, his expression was a bit gloomy. Ferdinand sneered and said, what are you thinking? How can you disciples, who haven't even reached the core formation stage, get involved in such a battle? Onkwangsung will not send some disciples in the foundation establishment stage to make a fool of themselves until he is completely dead. Oh. Yu Qianqiu got the answer he wanted and finally breathed a sigh of relief. As for Onkwangsung's life or death, he would not care, as long as Chu Ping was fine. Hey! Elder Ferdinand, I just heard you telling your 3 disciples to be careful where they go. Is your Wanfan garden also going to send people to Onkwangsung? Yu Qianqiu asked again. Fuxian Island doesn't need Wanfan garden to fight, unless all the people of the cultivation pavilion are dead. Ferdinand added, I think you have lost your mind. You don't even know the date of the Demon Ghost Domain. Demon Ghost Domain? Yu Qianqiu was stunned and said, the trial of the Demon Ghost Domain that happens once every 5 years is about to start. His face twisted unnaturally. He knew about this matter. Every 5 years, Fuxian Island would select the more outstanding disciples to go to the trial of the Demon Ghost Domain. It was a dangerous activity with a very high elimination rate. The so-called elimination rate was death, but the sect would spend a lot of effort to train those who could come back alive. To put it bluntly, the sect would train these people as future successors. However, to get such training, one had to risk their lives. Every time, half of the people who went would come back. The boundless demon ghost region was a place where demons and ghosts gathered. Even a sect as powerful as supporting Immortal Island couldn't enter the center of the demon ghost region. However, it was precisely because there were few people there that spirit herbs, which were almost extinct in other places, could often be seen there. The spirit herbs in the 10,000 fragrance garden were all brought back by the disciples who went to the 10,000 fragrance garden to cultivate. This was how the 10,000 fragrance garden was able to grow to its current size. Ferdinand said disdainfully, "It looks like you're afraid of being chosen." I think you should just put your heart at ease. No matter how bad the alchemy pavilion is, it doesn't seem like they would allow a disciple like you to enter the ranks of outstanding disciples. Why can't I be considered outstanding? Yu Qianzhou's words were on the tip of his tongue, but he stopped himself with a smile. It was too inauspicious to say that he was outstanding at this time. If he was really selected, then it would be like seeing a ghost. He still had a lot of things to do. Ferdinand snorted coldly, greedy for life and afraid of death, good for nothing. Senior sister, the pork trotters won't taste good when they're cold. Try this. Yu Qianzhou changed the topic as he served a plate of beef to Furong. Yu Qianzhou, who had eaten and drank to his heart's content, accompanied the father and daughter pair and fooled around for a while. Then, he found an excuse and left under Furong's reluctant gaze. With a full stomach, he slowly returned to the alchemy pavilion on his sword. Under the envious eyes of many disciples, Yu Qianzhou entered the main hall and went deep into the underground alchemy room. Every time he went to the 10,000 fragrance garden to have a sumptuous meal, he would come here to communicate with his master. Then, he would openly go to his private alchemy room and stealthily refine pills for himself. In the largest alchemy room underground, Guan Weiwu was fully devoted to his beloved alchemy. Yu Qianzhou walked over and bowed, Master. Guan Weiwu turned his head to look and said happily, Did you refine any pills again? Yu Qianzhou shook his head and said shamefully, Disciple is ignorant and still can't produce anything. Disciple will go back and continue to work hard. Guan Weiwu nodded, and there was a trace of disappointment in his eyes. It had been more than a year. How could this disciple's talent disappear like a meteor after a dazzling light? Then he sighed again. This disciple is not good, but the method of controlling the airflow with his divine sense is still far behind him as a master. Why can't I practice this seemingly simple thing? A master is not as good as a disciple, how can I teach? He also knew that Yu Qianzhou was not diligent in alchemy, but when he thought that he was not as good as his disciple in some aspects, how could he open his mouth to teach? Before Yu Qianzhou could completely walk out of Guan Weiwu's alchemy room, he was blocked by a person at the entrance. He looked up and saw that it was the only enemy of the alchemy pavilion, Yan Shu. The latter actually smiled strangely at him. Really looking for a beating? If I had a brick, I would have smashed you to death. That smile was too hateful. His master was behind him. Yu Qianzhou bowed unhappily and said, Deacon Yan. Yan Shu nodded and said with a smile, Yu Qianzhou, congratulations. Yu Qianzhou was stunned. The sun rose from the west today. He could not help but ask, what's there to congratulate me for? Congratulations on becoming our alchemy pavilion's outstanding disciple. Yan Shu said with a smile. Yu Qianzhou pointed at himself. Suddenly, a bad feeling welled up in his heart. Yan Shu did not say anything. He brushed past him and walked to Guan Weiwu's side. He bowed and said, Elder Guan, the alchemy pavilion's outstanding disciple who participated in the demon domain trial has been reported to the sect. The sect has already accepted it. It had already indirectly confirmed his thoughts. Yu Qianzhou shook his head in disbelief. His intuition told him that there was something fishy going on. Moreover, it must be related to that bastard Yan Shu. He did not believe that there was anyone in the alchemy pavilion who did not know that he was a glutton and lazy. How could they have designated him as an outstanding disciple? Got it. Guan Weiwu waved his hand and signaled him to leave. Deacon Yan, please wait. I have something to ask. Yu Qianzhou blocked Yan Shu's way out. Normally, Yan Shu's face would already be covered with dark clouds. However, at this time, he was very patient. He wore a thought-provoking smile and said, Ask whatever you want. I will definitely tell you everything I know. Yu Qianzhou's face darkened. What did you say about me becoming an outstanding disciple of the Alchemy Pavilion? I don't think I'm qualified. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu was unhappy, Yan Shu's smile became even wider. This time, the outstanding disciples who participated in the Demon Domain trial were personally decided by Elder Guan. There are 5 nascent soul, core formation, and foundation establishment. Elder Guan said that you should also be a foundation establishment outstanding disciple, so you are one of the 5. Chapter 103. It had to be said that Yan Shu was able to become a deacon of the Alchemy Pavilion. In addition to his father's background, he also had a good understanding of Guan Weiwu's temper. When the sect asked each branch to report their outstanding disciples to participate in the Demon Ghost Region trial, Yan Shu immediately thought that it was a good opportunity to get rid of Yu Qianqiu. After he reported the matter to Guan Weiwu, he just reminded him, Elder Guan, is Yu Qianqiu considered an outstanding disciple of the Alchemy Pavilion? Do you want to participate in this trial? Guan Weiwu was silent. Although Yu Qianqiu was not good at other things and was relatively lazy, he was still his disciple. Moreover, his alchemy skills were far inferior to him. In the Alchemy Pavilion, it was not an exaggeration to say that he was an outstanding disciple. So he pondered and said, Yu Qianqiu will be listed as an outstanding disciple in the foundation establishment stage and participate in the trial. As for the others, you can discuss with the seniors in the nascent soul stage. Yan Shu bowed and accepted the order, yes. This was how it happened. If Yan Shu didn't remind Guan Weiwu, the latter would definitely wave his hand and say that he didn't dare to include Yu Qianqiu. However, after reminding him, Yan Shu already knew the result. Master, you really want me to go to the Demon Ghost region for the trial? Yu Qianqiu walked a few steps to his master and asked. Yan Shu smiled and didn't say anything. Guan Weiwu's face was solemn. He also knew that the Demon Ghost region was a very dangerous place, but people were selfish. Since Yu Qianqiu was his personal disciple and he couldn't be in charge of the Alchemy Pavilion forever, it was better to leave the Alchemy Pavilion to his disciple in the future. As long as Yu Qianqiu could survive the Demon Ghost region, it would undoubtedly be able to shut many people's mouths in the future. Go. I'm also doing this for your own good. Guan Weiwu sighed. Master, it is very dangerous there. If I go, I'm afraid I won't be able to see Master again. Yu Qianqiu begged. Guan Weiwu frowned slightly and thought to himself, even if you're afraid of death, you don't have to say it out loud. You might not be afraid of losing face, but I am. His face stiffened as he shook his head. How can we change the matter that has already been reported to the sect? Wouldn't that be child's play? Sigh. You don't have to worry too much. The leading elders know that you are my direct disciple, so they will naturally know what to do. There won't be much danger. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. It turned out that he could go easy on this matter. In that case, it wouldn't be a bad thing to go for a stroll and broaden his horizons. But he didn't forget to remind, disciple will naturally obey Master's words. But Master, don't forget to greet the leading elders. Guan Weiwu glanced at Yan Shu with an awkward expression. This disciple of his didn't care about the occasion. He quickly waved his hand and said, Got it, you can go back first. Obtaining his master's promise, Yu Qianqiu heaved a sigh of relief as he walked out of the Alchemy Pavilion's main hall. But he still felt a little uneasy. This matter was really a little fishy. Not long after he left the main hall, he heard Yan Shu's voice coming from behind him. Yu Qianqiu, the day after tomorrow at sunrise, the participating disciples will gather here. Don't forget the time. Yu Qianqiu couldn't be bothered with him when he heard it and walked away on his own. Yan Shu then said behind him, Oh right, I forgot to tell you, I'm also participating in this time's trial. What? You're also participating? Yu Qianqiu turned around abruptly and asked. The other party sneered and said, "Yes, you didn't hear wrongly." His words were filled with a trace of coldness. F***ck. Yu Qianqiu let out a strange cry and rushed back into the alchemy pavilion's main hall. It was clear that Yan Shu wanted to kill him this time, so he had to make preparations early. Yan Shu was taken aback before he sneered and muttered, "It's too late to regret it now. Even your master can't change the person who has already been reported." He thought that Yu Qianqiu would go back to plead with his master, but that was not the case. Yu Qianqiu ran into the underground space and went straight to his private alchemy room. He grabbed the pill furnace and sent it into Utopia. He wanted to get what he needed first. He finally understood that Yan Shu would not let him go unless he killed him. In that case, it would depend on who killed who. He did not believe that he would not be able to kill him when he pulled by Suzhen, who was at the end of the Tribulation Transcendence stage. If he couldn't kill him, he would not return. He would leave as soon as possible and take revenge in the future. Young Qian, who was instructing people, saw Yu Qianqiu rush into the alchemy room. He did not know what had happened and followed him. When he entered, he was shocked. The pill furnace in the middle of the alchemy room had disappeared, and there was only a special black heat-insulating iron plate on the ground. Yu Qianqiu's expression did not look good. "Yu Qianqiu, where did you put the pill furnace?" Yang Qian asked. "Oh, Grandmaster Yang, it's nothing." Yu Qianqiu patted the storage bag on his waist and said, "I put the pill furnace inside. Master asked me to participate in the Demon Ghost Domain trial and told me to bring the pill furnace with me. I'll practice more when I'm free." "What? Elder Guan asked you to participate in the Demon Ghost Domain trial?" Yang Qian said in disbelief. Yu Qianqiu sighed and walked out. "I've taken it away. You guys can do whatever you want. Anyway, I won't take it out." As soon as he left, Yang Qian immediately came to Guan Weiwu and told him what had happened. The latter was silent for a moment, then nodded and said, "I know. Let him be. Let the equipment refining pavilion forge another pill furnace." It seemed that Yu Qianqiu was going to the Demon Ghost Domain trial. However, Yang Qian could not figure it out. Since he was going to participate in the trial, where did he bring the pill furnace to practice? Could it be in the Demon Ghost Domain? Was this a joke? Yu Qianqiu left the hall and flew straight to the 10,000 Fragrance Garden. Fei Dinan, who was sitting in the main hall, felt strange when he saw him again. This kid usually did not show up for a few days after eating. Today, he actually came again after leaving for a while. Did he not eat enough? "Why are you here again?" Fei Dinan found that his expression was a little bad. Yu Qianqiu walked to the chair on the side and sat down with his legs spread wide. He said angrily, "Master asked me to participate in the Demon Ghost Domain trial." Fei Dinan was stunned. He looked at him and sneered, "What's your intention? Just say it. Guan Weiwu asked you to participate in the trial. Is there really no one in the alchemy pavilion?" He did not believe it at all. After getting along with him for so long, he could see that it was good if 1 out of 10 of this kid's words were true. Under normal circumstances, he would lie with his eyes open and his expression would not change. Yu Qianqiu shook his head with a bitter smile and said, "I don't believe it either, but it's true. Master said it himself. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come to you." "Is what you said true?" Fei Dinan asked suspiciously. "Do I look like a liar to you?" Yu Qianqiu said snappily, "Of course it's true." Fei Dinan directly ignored the first half of his sentence. After listening to the second half of the sentence, he frowned and stood up. He had no choice but to pay attention to it. Who asked his precious daughter to not leave him? If something really happened to Yu Qianqiu, how could he explain it to his daughter? After thinking for a while with his eyes flickering, Ferdinand's eyebrows relaxed. He seemed to have figured something out. He shook his head and said with a smile, "I see. No wonder he never cared about this matter. Why did he suddenly care about it? I can't tell that the old pill addict actually has an ulterior motive. Yu Qianqiu, don't worry and go. Your master will arrange it. There won't be much danger." Yu Qianqiu did not know what he was talking about, so he directly said, "Master also said the same thing to you. I don't know what tricks there are between the higher-ups, but I know that Yan Shu, that bastard, will definitely kill me this time. Help me think about what to do." Chapter 104. Yan Tuo's son, Yan Shu. Ferdinand was surprised. Yan Tuo is willing to let his precious son go to Monster Ghost region for the trial. It's his business whether he's willing or not, and I can't control it. However, Yan Shu told me personally that he's going too, so it can't be fake. I have a grudge against him, and you know that. I'm afraid I'll be in danger if I go to Monster Ghost region with him. Yu Qianqiu said as he gestured at his neck with his hand. Ferdinand was silent. If Yan Shu really wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu in Monster Ghost region, it wouldn't be difficult. With his core formation late-stage cultivation, it wouldn't take him much effort to kill a foundation establishment stage disciple. What's more, no one could say for sure who killed a disciple in the demon domain. Yu Qianqiu, for this trial in Monster Ghost region, our Wanfan Garden isn't as good as the other branches, but we've chosen a disciple from each of the nascent soul, core formation, and foundation establishment stages to participate. You know all three of them. Follow them closely. With Yan Shu's core formation stage cultivation, he can't do anything to you. Ferdinand pondered as he stroked his beard. Yu Qianqiu's eyes lit up. He was waiting for this. Although he wasn't afraid of Yan Shu, it was better to have more people than none. He got up from the chair and said with a smile, "Then I'll have to trouble Elder Fei. I'll go back and make preparations first." With that, he swaggered out. Time passed quickly. The three people in Utopia had different thoughts about Yu Qianqiu going to Monster Ghost region. Guan Yu knew how high the death rate of Fuxian Island was. He was a little worried, but he didn't say much. Chen Feng was very loyal to Boss. In his heart, Boss was omnipotent and he worshipped her blindly. Bai Suzhen only had one sentence: "Call me out when you're in danger." In front of the Alchemy Pavilion's main hall, 15 disciples of different cultivation levels were ready to go, surrounded by a group of disciples watching. Guan Weiwu, who rarely appeared, was standing on the steps, looking at the disciples with a serious expression. Although he had seen such scenes many times, he couldn't help but feel a little emotional. He didn't know how many people would come back alive. With a sweep of his gaze, his disciple, Yu Qianqiu, was hiding at the back of the group of 5 foundation establishment cultivators, looking around. Compared to the others, he had an indifferent look. His mentality was not bad. Guan Weiwu nodded approvingly and waved to the crowd, "Let's go, follow me to Pinglai Pavilion." Guan Weiwu was the first to fly into the air, followed by the 15 disciples. 15 long swords were unsheathed at the same time. Shwa shwa shwa. Their imposing manner was astonishing. In an instant, they stepped on their swords and followed Elder Guan. Many of the surrounding disciples were shaking their heads and sighing. They sighed at how many of these people had gone, and how many of them had returned. There were also some disciples who revealed expressions of amazement and envy when they saw the seniors step on their swords together. Most of these people were disciples who hadn't reached the foundation establishment stage, so they didn't consider the dangers of the seniors' trip. Instead, they envied the seniors' ability to fly on their swords. The kind of mountain you stand on, the kind of firewood you cut. This sentence was very reasonable. In the crowd, Ling Feng and the other two watched Yu Qianqiu fly at the back and sighed endlessly. They were also depressed. When did he become an outstanding disciple? In front of Penglai Pavilion's main hall, when Guan Weiwu arrived with his people, there were already many people standing there. There were more people arriving one after another. Each faction stood in their own place, and the ones standing in front of each faction were the elders in charge of each faction. Yu Qianqiu craned his head and looked around. There were about 300 to 400 people here, and the Cultivation Pavilion faction standing at the easternmost side had the most people. There was a huge pile of people standing there. Their faction alone probably accounted for half of the people here. There were dozens of elders standing on the steps of the main hall. The sect master in the middle, Feng Xiangtian, looked at everyone with a solemn expression. An elder whispered a few words in his ear, and he nodded. The elder took out a small compass with a leg stand from his storage bag, shot a white light at it, and threw it forward. The compass instantly became as big as a dining table and stood in front of the main hall. The elder then cupped his hands towards the elders in charge of each faction and made a gesture of invitation. At this time, the Cultivation Pavilion on the east side moved first. The elders in charge of the faction led the disciples toward the compass. Yu Qianqiu did his best to crane his head. He really wanted to see what exactly was going on. Unfortunately, there were too many people, and his line of sight was blocked. It wasn't until it was the Alchemy Pavilion's turn that Yu Qianqiu's curiosity was satisfied. It was like a big drum, and it was filled with dense horizontal and vertical lines like a chessboard. There were 4 palm-shaped ears in each of the 4 directions. When they got closer, the elder kept reminding the disciples to place their palms on the ears of the compass and insert a strand of divine sense. After the insertion was successful, the ears of the compass would flash with a white light. After Yu Qianqiu did as he was told, he thought to himself, what is this thing? Each time, 4 people could insert their divine sense at the same time. It took a few hundred people less than an hour to finish. The elder used a spell to put away the compass. Soon after, 9 elders walked down the steps from behind the sect master. The 10 elders stood in a row and bowed to the sect master. According to Yu Qianqiu's estimation, it should be time for the gang leader to speak. Unexpectedly, Feng Xiangtian raised his hand and took out a small boat. He used a spell and threw it into the air. The small boat grew in the wind above everyone's heads. After a few moments, a big boat blocked the sky above everyone's heads, and it was dark below. Feng Xiangtian used another spell. The bottom of the big boat split open, and a floor appeared in front of the hole. It formed a staircase leading to the cabin. Feng Xiangtian nodded to the 10 elders. 5 of them immediately came out and took the stairs to board the boat. The other 5 guarded the stairs. The Cultivation Pavilion started, and the disciples of each faction also started to board the boat. Before Yu Qianqiu boarded the boat, he looked at his master affectionately. Then, he turned around and boarded the boat. When he got on the boat, he realized that the boat was really big. An elder came over to instruct them to sit cross-legged with their own faction's people. There weren't even stools, so they just sat on the floor. He just happened to sit on the wall of the boat. When the other 5 elders came up, they announced that everyone had boarded. What made Yu Qianqiu a little depressed was that he wanted to listen to the spirit of the gang leader's speech. Unfortunately, Feng Xiangtian didn't say a word from beginning to end. He maintained the dignity of a sect leader very well. When the surrounding scenery changed, everyone knew that the boat was already on the way to the Demon Ghost region. For a moment, many people's expressions became solemn. Yu Qianqiu glanced at Yan Shu, who was resting with his eyes closed. He turned around to look for the 3 female disciples of Wanfen Garden. He found them sitting at the very back. There was also a girl next to them who looked a little familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen her before. Senior Marshal Brother Quan, is that Senior Marshal Brother Guan's disciple? An elder asked the elder next to him. The elder, who was referred to as Senior Brother Quan, looked in the direction he was pointing at and saw Yu Qianqiu leaning against the wall of the ship, sleeping. There was a faint sheen of moisture at the corner of his mouth. On the other hand, the other disciples with high cultivation were resting with their eyes closed. Those with low cultivation were generally a little uneasy. Obviously, they were a little afraid of going to the demon ghost region. However, this was also human nature. Most of them were disciples who left the island for the first time. But that kid was a little too much. He could actually fall asleep and drool. Wasn't he worried at all? Elder Quan looked at Yu Qianqiu and shook his head slightly with a wry smile. That time in the alchemy pavilion, he was also one of the elders who watched Yu Qianqiu refine pills with the sect leader. How could he not know him? He turned his head and said to the person next to him, "Junior Marshal Brother Sun. It is Yu Qianqiu who Senior Marshal Brother Guan asked us to take care of. This kid is a little interesting. He is really worthy of being Senior Marshal Brother Guan's personal disciple." Elder Sun laughed. Another round of sun rose. An elder standing at the bow of the boat reached out his hand to block the dazzling sunlight. He looked into the distance and saw that the distant sky was covered with gloomy clouds. It seemed incompatible with the rising sun. He turned around and glanced at everyone in the cabin. He shouted in a deep voice, "The demon ghost region is in front of us. Everyone, get ready." Chapter 105. Everyone in the cabin stood up, including Yu Qianqiu. He stood up with a start and wiped the liquid from the corner of his mouth. He stuck his head out of the side of the ship and looked around. The flying boat flew at high speed. Not long after, the white clouds in front of them were replaced by dark clouds. As they flew further, the land was shrouded in a dense fog, and the scenery on the ground was faintly discernible. As far as the eyes could see, it was a boundless haze, and it seemed extremely strange. The sound of the flying ship piercing through the air became louder and louder. It flew faster and faster as if it wanted to fly through the darkness below. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Suddenly, a few sharp sounds came from afar. Many people's expressions changed as they looked towards the source of the sounds. There seemed to be a few flying ships in the sky above the clouds. They seemed to be flying in the same direction as the people from supporting Immortal Island. "Everyone, don't panic. It's the other sects that are here to gain experience." The elder at the bow shouted at everyone. He turned back and squinted at the flying ship that was also flying over. Yu Qianqiu recognized him. This elder was the Cultivation Pavilion's Dongfang elder. His cultivation had reached the middle stage of the Crossing Calamity stage. Everyone felt relieved when they heard that it was the other sects that were here to gain experience. Not long after, 5 similar flying ships flew over and flew side by side with the supporting Immortal Island ship. The 6 ships flew in the same direction. Damn it! Don't tell me that Ongquangsong is among them. I'm very famous in Ongquangsong. Almost everyone knows me. Yu Qianqiu looked carefully for a long time. He was relieved when he realized that they were all sects that he didn't know. A mountain that broke through the clouds suddenly appeared in front of them. It caused many people to exclaim that there was such a tall mountain. The 6 ships slowed down and flew to the peak of the mountain. They spread out in a hexagonal formation and stopped. Other than the Dongfang elder, the other 9 elders of supporting Immortal Island jumped off the ship. People from the other sects also jumped off. Yu Qianqiu leaned on the side of the ship and watched. He saw the people from the other sects meeting as if they were discussing something. Then, they quickly spread out. Light flashed continuously around the mountain peak. It was obvious that the sects were working together to set up some formation. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Elder Dongfang shouted from the bow, all disciples disembark. Without a word, Yu Qianqiu climbed over the side of the ship and was the first to jump down. As soon as he landed, he saw a black shadow flash in front of him. There seemed to be something extra in his chest. Yu Qianqiu was taken aback. He looked suspiciously at elder son beside him. If he wasn't mistaken, it was this elder son who had stuffed something into his chest. He reached his hand out to see what it was when a voice transmission suddenly sounded in his ear. Don't look at it now, but there are 10 Vidra talismans inside. Each talisman can resist a late-stage nascent soul cultivator's attack for a quarter of an hour. It's enough for you to save your life 10 times in an emergency. There is also a jade stone from me and Elder Quan. If you really have no other choice, you can crush one of them and one of us will come to save you. Remember, don't use the jade stone unless you have no other choice. Otherwise, it'll be easy for others to find out that you're cheating. After descending the mountain, don't go more than 500 kilometers away from the foot of the mountain. Remember, don't go south. That direction leads to the center of the demon domain. There are all kinds of powerful demons and ghosts there. Even a late-stage transcending tribulation cultivator can't guarantee their safety. Boy, remember my words well. Don't waste your master's efforts. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He looked at Elder Sun who was beside him and then at Elder Quan who was not far away. The two of them were the same as the other elders who had come this time. They were both elders of the cultivation pavilion. It turned out that his master had already arranged for them to be spies. Yu Qianqiu was moved. He silently nodded. Elder Sun glanced at him and walked away without saying a word. Originally, all the disciples were sitting together on the ship, but after jumping off the ship, they scattered. Yu Qianqiu didn't notice that there was a disciple from the alchemy pavilion next to him. He looked around and was startled. Yan Shu was looking at him with a sneer. There were more than 10 people standing behind him. They were obviously in cahoots with some bastard. Yu Qianqiu's face darkened. That's Elder Yan's disciple from the utility hall. Yu Qianqiu, you're in big trouble. A woman's voice came from behind him. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and immediately said happily, Ancestor Ko, Martial Uncle Murong, Senior Sister Mei, long time no see. I missed you so much. They were the 3 disciples sent by Wan Fan Garden to gain experience. As soon as he finished speaking, a beautiful woman standing next to the 3 acquaintances covered her mouth and giggled. There were too many beautiful women in Wan Fan Garden. They often hung out together, so Yu Qianqiu's nerves were a bit numb. Looking at beautiful women was like looking at cabbages. He glanced at them indifferently and asked, This is? I don't think I've seen you in Wan Fan Garden before. The woman stopped laughing and introduced herself, early stage core formation, Xiao Wanqing. We've met before in Wan Fan Garden's main hall. At the time, my master, Elder Qiu, and I were treating Furong's leg injury. What? You don't remember anything? Oh. I remember now. So it's Martial Uncle Xiao. Yu Qianqiu slapped his forehead and bowed. Xiao Wanqing smiled nonchalantly and glanced at the 4 of them. Her eyes turned into crescents. My safe pavilion doesn't have many people to begin with. This time, they only sent me out to gain experience. I see that the 4 of you want to go together. I happen to have no one by myself. Can you bring me along? Welcome, welcome. Yu Qianqiu wanted as many people as possible. Plus, it was a core formation cultivator. He immediately welcomed her warmly. Then, he turned around and raised his chin in Yan Shu's direction. If you have people, so do I, plus, they are the 4 beauties. Yan Shu sneered disdainfully, turned around and ignored him. The 6 flying shuttles floating in the air were all put away. The 6 sects gathered at the top of the mountain and it immediately became lively. there was a place where hundreds of beauties gathered. It immediately caught Yu Qianzhou's attention. Other than the Moon Clan, which only accepted female disciples, there was no other sect like this. When he looked at the other sects, Yu Qianzhou saw a familiar face. He choked. Years ago, in the 100 Flowers Valley, he drank with a guy who called himself 10,000 Demons Qiu Yuan. That guy mocked him a little, so he had a deep impression of his face. Who else could this person be if not Qiu Yuan? What's going on? Why are the diabolical sects and the righteous sects together? Looking at how arrogant this old guy is in that group, he seems to have a high status. Did I mistake him for someone else? The more Yu Qianzhou looked at him, the more he felt that he was right. He looked exactly the same as the Qiu Yuan in his memory. That Qiu Yuan seemed to feel that someone was observing him. He suddenly turned around and looked arrogant. When he saw Yu Qianzhou, he was also stunned. Then, he smiled and nodded in a friendly manner. Damn! He smiled at me. It really is the 10,000 Demons Qiu Yuan. Yu Qianzhou was already sure that it was him. Looking at the clothes of the people around him, he was definitely from the same sect. Ancestor Ko. Are my eyes playing tricks on me? Why do I see people from the 10,000 demons here too? Yu Qianzhou turned around and said in surprise. The righteous sects and diabolical sects had always been incompatible. Now, they were actually training together. He couldn't help but be surprised. Chapter 106. Ko Shuhua, who was at the nascent soul stage, had the appearance of a charming young woman. She looked at Yu Qianzhou with surprise. In the supporting immortal island, disciples with low cultivation like him had never come into contact with the cultivation world before they started cultivating. Very few of them had ever left the island. How could he recognize someone from the Myriad Devil's Palace? Then she remembered that he was a lone cultivator and understood. He nodded and said, "They are indeed people from the Myriad Demon's Palace." The supporting immortal island, the Daluo sect, and the Moon sect are the top 3 sects of the righteous Dao and the top 3 sects of the demonic Dao. The Myriad Demon's Palace, Blood Demon Palace, and Corpse sect are all here. Most of the disciples of the 6 major sects who have participated in the trial in the Demon Ghost domain will keep their mouths shut about this matter, so you don't know. I participated in it when I was in the foundation establishment and core formation stages, so I know more than you. Those who had not experienced this before looked at each other in dismay. No one had expected that there would be such a secret in the Demon Domain trial. TSK. This was the 3rd time, Martial Ancestor Ko. Looks like you'll be the next chief elder of Wanfen Garden when we get back. Yu Qianzhou wasn't trying to flatter him. This was the rule of the supporting immortal island. Those who could survive the 3 calamities at the 3 cultivation stages would mostly be nurtured as the successor of the main branch. If there were many competitors, as long as their cultivation reached a certain level, they would at least become an elder. If Yu Qianzhou knew that his master, Guan Weiwu, also wanted him to go through 3 trials and take over as the next chief elder, what would he think? Let's not talk about the future. It's more important to go back alive. Ko Shuhua slowly looked down the mountain. She seemed to be thinking of something. Hee. The Blood Demon Palace's strength is indeed extraordinary. They are competing with the Blue Light School over there, and they still have the mood to participate in the Demon Domain trials here. Yu Qianzhou looked at the group of people in blood-red clothes and laughed. Then, his gaze fell on a group of people from the righteous sect dressed in khaki-colored clothes. His eyes narrowed slightly as he asked in a deep voice, "Ancestral Master Ko, are those people in yellow the disciples of the exalted sect?" Ko Shuhua looked back and nodded. "Yes." "Oh. Daluo sect. I've heard a lot about you." Yu Qianzhou said word by word. A cold light flashed in his squinted eyes. Elder Dongfang Chang Ao, was the host of this trial. After meeting with the other 5 sects, he came back to see his own sect's disciples forming their own groups, hoping that they could survive this ordeal safely with their numbers. The white-haired Dongfang Changgao stood with his hands clasped behind his back. He frowned and snorted coldly. After that, a powerful aura pressed down on the disciples of the supporting immortal island. Yu Qianqiu felt as though his blood was about to burst out from his 7 apertures. In an instant, everyone quieted down. The aura disappeared without a trace. Dongfang Chang Ao took out the compass from his storage bag and placed it in front of him. He looked at everyone and said, 3 months for nascent soul cultivators, 2 months for core formation cultivators, and 1 month for foundation establishment cultivators. I, Dongfang Chang Ao, and the other 9 elders will await your return. However, those who don't pass the time limit are not allowed to go up the mountain. Otherwise, they will be killed. After that, he cast a spell at the compass. The surface of the compass flashed. He waved his hand and shouted, all disciples participating in the trial, go down the mountain. No one dared to hesitate. They all jumped down the mountain. When Yu Qianqiu showed the compass to the 4 girls, he couldn't help but take a look. He saw that the light spots on the compass were moving. It turned out to be a magic treasure that knew where people were. Those who had inserted their divine sense into the compass would be shown on it. The sound of footsteps could be heard. The disciples of the other sects had also started to descend the mountain. No one dared to fly. In this place, flying fast was useless. Perhaps even if they flew fast, they would also die fast. The most important thing was to muddle through the time and return safely. The yin fog was thick like clouds. It was locked in the middle of the mountain. The upper half of the mountain was still sunny, but the lower half of the mountain was covered by the black fog. It was like a rainy day. Not to mention the fact that the yin fog was much dimmer, the yin fog blocked people's vision. Occasionally, 1 or 2 strange screams could be heard. The mountain became more and more rugged as they went down. It was like they were in a different world. Some people like Ko Shuahua, who had experience in the devil's domain, drew their weapons. Even the newbies who were affected by the experience also drew their weapons. The atmosphere was so heavy that it was scary. Damn it! It was full of yin energy. It was worthy of the name Demon Region. Yu Qianqiu held a sword in his hand and looked around for Yan Shu and the others. It was better not to be attacked by that bastard. Ko Shuahua said softly, don't stop here. Go down the mountain quickly. Yu Qianqiu was stunned. He also said softly, Grandmaster, it's a bit scary at the bottom of the mountain. Let's just hide here. It'll be convenient to go back when we have enough time. We can also take less risks. What do you think? Although Xiao Wanqing, Murong Xian, and Mei Yinhong didn't say anything, they all nodded in agreement with Yu Qianqiu. It was dark at the bottom of the mountain, but it was indeed a bit scary. When they looked back, they would know that there were many people from various sects who had the same idea. They all stopped and planned to stay here for a long time. Ko Shuahua said a little angrily, let's go. The demons and ghosts here are most fond of blood. We have figured out the rules of the trial held every 5 years by the 6 major sections. Moreover, there is no place to hide on the mountainside. It will be crowded with people. It will be hard to escape if there is an accident. Yu Qianqiu and the other 3 women looked at each other in dismay. They then looked at the other sects and saw that there were already people rushing down the mountain without stopping. They seemed to be older people, and it was likely that they were people with experience in trials. Seeing that the 4 people were still in a daze, Ko Shuahua stamped her feet and said, if you don't go, I'll go first. She turned and walked down the mountain. To be honest, if Ferdinand hadn't repeatedly told her that it would be safer for her to get rid of Yu Qianqiu with her cultivation, it would be a burden to protect people with low cultivation like him. Don't. Grandmaster, wait for us. Yu Qianqiu shouted softly. The 4 people already believed her and hurriedly followed Ko Shuahua. After walking for a short while, although he had walked quite a distance, it was a pity that he was still a little too late. Suddenly, there were sounds similar to that of birds flying in the sky. There were also sounds similar to the squeaking of mice. Following that, the sounds increased in number and density until they could be heard everywhere. Yu Qianqiu looked around at the scattered trees that grew strangely in 2s and 3s. He didn't know where the sound came from. It's the bloodthirsty demon hunters. Everyone, keep quiet. Cover each other and quickly go down the mountain. Ko Shuahua ordered. The 4 people hurriedly followed her words and moved quickly. The 4 women surrounded Yu Qianqiu, who had the weakest cultivation, and quickly walked down the mountain. In the distant sky, there was darkness at first, and then an overwhelming number of red dots covered the sky. They flew over the 5 people and rushed to the mountainside. Yu Qianqiu looked up and found that the red dots were actually the eyes of bats. A large group of black bats the size of washbasins were squeaking ferociously. It made people's hands and feet numb and scared. Fortunately, they ran fast. This time, those guys on the mountain who wanted to take advantage of the situation were doomed. Yu Qianqiu shook his head and sighed. It seemed that he had the same idea as them just now, but he had forgotten. Sure enough, there were screams everywhere on the mountainside. Bats, bats, such big bats, ah. There were already people screaming. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and looked. In the distance, there were sword rays everywhere. The people on the mountainside were already fighting with the bats. The shrill cries of the bats were mixed with the occasional screams of someone. It was a little hard to listen to. Some people actually wanted to escape on their swords. But as soon as they flew up, they were surrounded by the bats. They screamed and fell from the sky. Yu Qianqiu saw this and cursed in his heart. What idiots! With so many people protecting them, they might not be able to do anything to them. Trying to escape would make them die faster. The people on the mountainside had probably learned from those who wanted to escape. They started to fight calmly. Gradually, there were no more screams. Dang! Yu Qianqiu was startled by the crisp sound beside him. Wouldn't it kill him to make a sound at this time? He turned around and saw that Mei Yinhong was observing the situation on the mountainside from time to time. She accidentally touched the rock beside her with her sword. The 5 people looked up at the sky at the same time. If they had waited for a while longer, all the bats would have reached the mountainside. But now, there were only a few hundred bats in the sky. They were flapping their wings and floating in the air. He glared at the 5 of them with a ferocious expression with his bright red eyes. F***CK. What the hell is this unlucky girl doing? Sigh. Yu Qianqiu groaned in pain. Chapter 107. Squeak squeak. It was like the sound of an attack horn. The blood-sucking demon bats the size of washbasins scattered in the air. Along with the rapid cries, hundreds of demon bats condensed into a whirlwind and rushed down. Yu Qianqiu, who was a little worried at the beginning, completely calmed down in the face of the upcoming fierce battle. Under his calm appearance, a long-lost passion surged through his limbs. In his mind, a person holding 2 machetes appeared in a corner of the city, rushing towards a group of people. Wherever he went, blood would spurt out, accompanied by the cries of his opponents. The bloody wounds on his body would also increase, but at that time, there was only one thought. Kill. A long-suppressed killing intent boiled in his chest, and a domineering aura instantly spread out. Yu Qianqiu looked at the hundreds of blood-sucking demon bats in the sky and trembled with excitement. The four women around him also noticed his abnormality. Even Ko Shuihua, who was at the nascent soul stage, felt a little uncomfortable from the special aura he emitted. "You guys guard the surroundings, leave the rest to me." Yu Qianqiu's tone was unquestionable. Looking at the demon bats that swooped down with their fangs bared, he pointed two fingers at the sky and shouted, "Kill." As soon as the sword in his hand flew out, two cold lights immediately rushed out from his storage bag. The three sword lights cooperated with each other and spun in a circle. They were as fast as lightning and rushed towards the demon bats. Squeak squeak. The group of demon bats that rushed down let out a series of sorrowful cries and were quickly dismembered into minced meat, accompanied by a rain of blood. The demon bats' whirlwind-like attack formation was immediately scattered. They flew into the air and flapped their wings. This attack caused nearly 100 demon bats to die. Women love to be clean, but at this critical moment, they couldn't dodge. The four of them were immediately drenched in a rain of minced meat and blood. Other than Ko Shuihua, the three women all forgot about the danger they were in. They bitterly touched the minced meat on their heads, afraid that it would fall off their hands. Ko Shuihua looked at the three flying swords in the sky in surprise. They were actually controlling three swords at the same time. What a good coordination. Obviously, the power of each sword was not much, but when they worked together, they had such great lethality. Did Fuxian Island have such a sword technique? Why haven't I seen anyone use it before? The demon bats squeaked and swooped down again. This time, they had learned their lesson and rushed over in all directions. Yu Qianqiu shouted, "Come on." His fingers formed a seal, and the three flying swords in the air moved as fast as lightning, like a jade maiden shuttling back and forth in all directions. It was obviously three flying swords, but when the four girls looked up, it was as if there were flying swords everywhere above their heads. Brilliant lights overflowed in all directions, appearing and disappearing one after another, extremely dazzling. One by one, the black shadows were pierced by the white light, smashing heavily onto the ground. Squeak squeak. Of the hundreds of demon bats, only a dozen or so were left in such a short period of time. They didn't dare to come anymore and fled in panic. Yu Qianqiu snorted coldly. Trying to run. His fingers moved, and a dozen or so cold lights flashed in the air. The dozen or so fleeing demon bats lost their momentum in the blink of an eye. They paused in the air for a moment, and then fell down stiffly. Yu Qianqiu stopped his hand seals. He clenched his fist and shouted, "Withdraw." The long sword returned to its scabbard, and the other two cold lights flashed into the storage bag. The girls looked at each other. They originally thought it would be troublesome. After all, there were more demon bats. Who knew that before they could even make a move, Yu Qianqiu, a Foundation Establishment stage disciple, would be able to single-handedly deal with them? Ko Shuihua frowned and thought for a while, then looked at Yu Qianqiu and said, "I remember, I seem to have seen a spell that can control multiple swords at the same time in the scripture pavilion. I think it's called Guiyuan sword spell. Are you practicing this sword spell?" Yu Qianqiu himself was also very satisfied with the sword spell's debut. He nodded and smiled. Grandmaster Ko's eyes are really sharp, seeing through it at a glance. The other three girls looked at each other, and Xiao Wanqing sighed softly. What a beautiful sword spell. Mei Yinhong nodded repeatedly in agreement. Yes. Yes. Foundation Establishment stage cultivators can practice this kind of sword spell. Why didn't I know about it before? When I go back, I must find it to practice. In fact, all women liked flashy but impractical things, but there was a condition, and that was, it must be beautiful. That's not right. Ko Shiwa shook her head and frowned. Guiyuan sword spell, I have carefully studied it before. It is impossible for it to have such great power, especially with such an unbelievable speed, not to mention your cultivation level is at the foundation establishment stage. The other three girls heard this and looked at him suspiciously. Yu Qianqiu smiled in disdain. Did you even need to say that? Big sister already said that this sword art's power was not enough, so I risked almost going berserk to improve it. I fused in two of the most powerful elements. 1. Unity is strength, and mutual cooperation is important. The other is what the martial arts novels in his previous life say, in the world of martial arts, only speed is unbeatable. But this is personal privacy, I can't tell you. Want to learn Guiyuan sword spell? Go to the scripture pavilion and slowly learn it. Seeing that he smiled and didn't answer, Ko Shiwa also didn't want to waste time on this question. She said to the others, let's hurry down the mountain and find a place to hide, otherwise it will be troublesome when it gets dark. They looked back at the battle between humans and bats on the mountainside and didn't know when it would end, but they didn't care anymore. After all, their own lives were more important than others, so they hurriedly followed Ko Shiwa down the mountain. Generally speaking, Yan Shu was very lucky. Of the 15 disciples sent by his father from the Sundries Hall, 7 had participated in the Demon Ghost Realm's trial. When they reached the mountainside, the seniors decisively led him down the mountain. When he saw the sky full of demon bats flying to the mountainside, Yan Shu was secretly shocked. Although demon bats weren't powerful things, they couldn't withstand so many of them together. Along the way, in the gloomy atmosphere, various kinds of demon beasts appeared from time to attack, either alone or in groups. Yan Shu followed the seniors and the experts of other sects all the way to the foot of the mountain, leaving behind piles of demon beasts' corpses. Now he finally understood why his father didn't let him come here for the trial before. This time, he reported his name behind his father's back, which caused his father to be furious. He didn't deny that this impulse was all because of Yu Qianqiu. First, he wanted to kill Yu Qianqiu to vent his anger. Second, it was because Yu Qianqiu made him lose face several times in the alchemy pavilion, causing many disciples to treat him as a joke. He wanted to use this trial to regain some face. Now that the thought of revenge was gone, it didn't matter if he lost face or not. His only thought was to find a way to survive and return to supporting Immortal Island alive. He shouldn't have come. At that time, he was too impulsive. He didn't think about it. Since Yu Qianqiu was here, even if he didn't kill him, what chance did he have to go back? Even if he went back, he wouldn't have a chance to take revenge in the future. Not only was he depressed, but the seniors who were always protecting him were also depressed. It was good enough that he could ensure his own survival in the demon ghost domain. Now, he had to spend effort to protect others. It was really a headache. But he was Elder Yan's precious son. Before coming here, Elder Yan had repeatedly reminded them. The meaning of his words was nothing more than hinting to them that they could get into trouble, but nothing could happen to his son. Otherwise, he wouldn't forgive them when he came back. The sky was getting dark, and it was also the time when the biggest crisis was coming. Once they reached the foot of the mountain, the people from the various sects found the people who were most beneficial to them and formed small teams. There were even many people who abandoned their own sects and formed teams with experts from other sections. They looked for places to hide in order to survive the terrifying night in the demon ghost domain. On the mountain peak, the various sects carried the divine sense compass to check the situation of their disciples. Dongfang Chang Ao and the elders of supporting Immortal Island stared at the compass with a heavy expression. More than 10 light spots on the compass had disappeared. This meant that more than 10 disciples from supporting Immortal Island had died. There were also a few light spots that were very dim. Needless to say, they were definitely seriously injured. They looked at the sky and saw that it wasn't dark yet. Elder Quan and Elder Sun, who were staring at the compass, heaved a sigh of relief. The light spot that represented Yu Qianqiu was still very bright. This meant that this kid was still alive and well. He was able to survive the first wave of demonic beasts. Obviously, this kid wasn't as useless as Senior Brother Guan said. The two elders looked at each other at the same time. Chapter 108. The five of them descended the mountain smoothly and did not encounter any more danger. Along the way, the corpses of demonic beasts could be seen everywhere, either scattered or in groups. There was not a single living demonic beast to be seen. Clearly, the people who went down the mountain first had killed their way down, clearing the obstacles for the people behind them, saving them a lot of effort. The sky was about to turn dark, and the entire demonic ghost region was hazy and gloomy. The old trees around them were in strange shapes, and the occasional cry of an old bird could be heard from afar. Xiao Wanqing and the other two girls looked a little pale. They peeked at their surroundings from time to time, but they did not dare to look openly. Clearly, the surrounding atmosphere was affecting them greatly. Yu Qianqiu looked around and sighed. This place was the best place to shoot a horror film. It would be a waste if they did not make use of it. Ko Shuahua kept urging them to move faster. Her expression was very anxious. Yu Qianqiu caught up with her and turned his head to suggest, "Ancestor Ko, let's just use sword kinesis flight." No. Ko Shuahua rejected immediately, "We do not know how many things are around here. If we fly, we will immediately become a target. We will not be able to survive the night. Then we might as well hide here. There are people halfway up the mountain, and the others have already gone down the mountain. We will not be an obvious target if we hide here. It should be safer." Yu Qianqiu looked around and said. Ko Shuahua shook her head again and rejected, "No, the entire mountain is the most dangerous place now. With so many dead demonic beasts, just the smell of blood will spread for dozens of miles. When night falls, all kinds of demonic ghosts will gather here to look for food. At that time, all kinds of things will be scattered all over the mountain. Where can you hide?" Yu Qianqiu thought it made sense, so he did not speak anymore. The few of them rushed down the mountain. The five of them hurriedly ran, and when the sky darkened, the girls gave up on their womanly modesty. They lifted their skirts with both hands and started running. Yu Qianqiu sized them up a few times. It was a pity that they were all wearing long pants, or else he would have gotten a good look. Just as they were about to reach the foot of the mountain, the five of them stopped abruptly. Looking around, they saw densely packed green lights flashing. At the foot of the mountain, a group of red-haired dog-like creatures surrounded the mountain with their green eyes. "What is this?" Everyone's expressions changed as they looked at Ko Shuahua. Ko Shuahua said sullenly, "The blood wolves are the most numerous demonic beasts in the fiend domain. They should have been attracted by the smell of blood on the mountain." They immediately picked up their swords again. Howl. The leader of the pack, a strong blood wolf, had also discovered them. It caused the leader to howl, and immediately, the howls of the wolves rose and fell. After the howling, one or two blood wolves took the lead and rushed towards them. Following that, the rest of the blood wolves swarmed over as well. From where they were standing, they could see that there were too many wolves moving up and down like the waves of the sea. "Kill the fish that slipped through the net. Don't let them get close," Yu Qianqiu shouted in a low voice. In such a situation, he had unknowingly placed himself in the role of a commander. Without waiting for the wolves to run over, he decisively released 3 flying swords. 3 sword flares flashed into the wolf pack and slaughtered wantonly. Wherever the sword flares went, the group of beast stomachs and intestines flowed out as they collapsed. However, there were too many of them. No matter how fast Yu Qianqiu's flying swords were, they could not stop the wolves from charging forward without any regard for their lives. The 4 women immediately sent their flying swords over. The 7 flying swords were like chopping melons and vegetables. The corpses of the wolves gradually piled up. However, there were too many wolves. In addition, compared to ordinary wolves, the blood wolves were faster and more agile. The blood wolves that could not rush over directly cleverly circled around from the sides. Not long after, they surrounded the 5 of them. Instantly, it caused a lot of trouble for them. As the attack range expanded, more and more blood wolves slipped through the net. The few of them had no choice but to reduce the attack range of the flying swords. They could not care less about killing the blood wolves. It was already fortunate that they could not let the blood wolves near them. At this moment, someone on the mountain shouted, "Are the disciples of Supporting Immortals Island down there?" Yu Qianqiu diverted his attention to look. There were probably close to 1,000 people rushing down from the mountain. Needless to say, they must be the disciples who were surrounded by the bloodthirsty demon bats. Coincidentally, Yu Qianqiu knew the person who shouted just now. He immediately replied loudly, "Gu Qingyun, stop talking nonsense. Come and help." While he was distracted, more than 10 blood wolves rushed over. He quickly focused his attention to kill them and defend his side. Gu Qingyun was none other than the person who extorted 2 top-grade spirit stones from Yu Qianqiu in the Sutra Depository. When Gu Qingyun heard the contents of Yu Qianqiu's shout, he was startled. Coincidentally, Yu Qianqiu turned his head back and he couldn't tell who it was. However, judging from the robes of the 5 people and the fact that that person was able to call out his name, there was no doubt that they were disciples of the Supporting Immortal Island. Gu Qingyun held the long sword in his hand and turned to the disciples of the various sections. He raised his arms and shouted, "Our cultivation is low. No one knows if we can go back alive. But after the battle just now, I think we must understand a principle. Only by being united can we have hope to survive. Everyone, help the disciples of Supporting Immortals Island to escape. If you have any difficulties in the future, the disciples of Supporting Immortals Island will not stand idly by. Those who are not willing to help, I will not force them. Those who are willing to help, follow me and kill." Gu Qingyun shouted and suddenly turned around. He took the lead and ran down the mountain. The flying sword in his hand turned into a stream of light and shot towards the blood wolves. The disciples of Supporting Immortals Island immediately released their flying swords and rushed down. The disciples of the various sects also knew that Gu Qingyun was speaking the truth. If it was not for everyone's unity at the waist of the mountain, it was unknown how many of them would have survived. Immediately, most of them rushed down together. A small portion of them wanted to go around the blood wolves and go down the mountain. But looking at the sky, they did not dare to go. Who knew what was in front of them? It was safer to have more people. Thus, they helplessly rushed down. Damn it! This kid can really bewitch people's hearts. He is a talent. Yu Qianqiu also heard Gu Qingyun's words. Nearly 1,000 people rushed down and immediately helped the 5 of them out of trouble. Gu Qingyun directly walked to Yu Qianqiu's side. He wanted to see who was the familiar person who told him to stop talking nonsense. After seeing clearly, he said in astonishment, "It's you." "That's me." Yu Qianqiu nodded and laughed. He thought to himself, if I don't speak to you in a very familiar tone, who knows if you will come down. Gu Qingyun coldly snorted and turned his head to focus on controlling his sword to kill the wolves. With so many cultivators attacking, the blood wolves immediately suffered a great loss. Not long after, the remaining nearly 10,000 blood wolves all retreated far away and surrounded the group. But the nature of wolves was ferocious and would not give up until they achieved their goals. They would never easily give up on their prey. Oh whoa! First, there was a wolf's howl, followed by a wave of howls. Finally, all the blood wolves were howling. Not long after, wolf howls came from everywhere in the distance. From the sounds, it seemed like they were all gathering here. Are they summoning their own kind? Everyone was bewildered. This was going to be troublesome. Indeed, not long after, green eyes were everywhere in the distance. A wave of killing intent was gathered here, and there were rustling sounds everywhere. The sky was almost dark. It was hazy, and the appearance of the wolves could not be seen clearly. They could only see that there were constantly glowing green eyes filling up the wolf pack that surrounded the group. Everyone, regardless of whether they were from the orthodox Tao or the demonic Tao, became a little nervous. Yu Qianqiu turned his head and said to Gu Qingyun with a smile, "I didn't expect a group of cultivators to be trapped by a pack of wolves. Have you heard of such a thing before?" He was not nervous at all. If it really couldn't be done, he could run to Utopia to hide. Gu Qingyun could not be bothered with him. It was not worth it to be trapped for this scoundrel. He was quite regretful. Suddenly, a few people in the crowd flew up on streams of light. However, before they could leave everyone's line of sight, they saw a few beams of red light soar into the sky. Those people screamed as they were engulfed by the red light. Everyone was secretly alarmed. Some of the people who had the same thoughts immediately calmed down. People often say that a general success is achieved through 10,000 corpses. A faint singing voice suddenly came from afar. When it landed in Yu Qianqiu's ears, it sounded like the singing of a Beijing opera. He could not help but be surprised. Everyone listened attentively. Who had the guts to sing here? When the singing voice sounded, the surrounding wolf pack became restless, appearing abnormally uneasy. Helplessly. Unfavorable times. The singing voice continued and seemed to be getting closer. The wolf pack also underwent a huge change. Like dogs that had been beaten up, they howled softly and fled with their tails between their legs. Not long after, the tens of thousands of wolves that surrounded them all ran away, leaving only corpses all over the ground. Everyone was even more astonished. Who could actually scare off a pack of wolves with just a song? Yu Qianqiu suddenly realized that something was wrong with Ko Shuihua, who was beside him. He could not help but ask, "Grandmaster Ko, do you know who's singing?" When the people nearby heard that, they all looked at her. Ko Shuihua bit her lips hard and said word by word, "Ghost. General. Army." Chapter 109. It was their first time coming to the demon region and they had no experience. Otherwise, they would have run away like the others instead of being trapped by the wolves. Naturally, they didn't know who the ghost general was. However, from Ko Shuihua's tone, they could tell that the so-called ghost general was not a kind person. A core-bearing stage disciple of Fuxian Island sneered, "Ghost general. He's only equivalent to the core-bearing stage. We have so many people here, and Uncle Master Ko is at the nascent soul stage. Why should we be afraid of this monster? Let's leave now and see what he can do to us." "We can't leave. Everyone who came here can't leave." Ko Shuihua shook her head sadly. "Ghost General is his title. In fact, his cultivation has reached the final stage of the Ghost King, which is equivalent to the final stage of our tribulation stage. He has hundreds of thousands of ghost soldiers and ghost generals under his command. He is the ruler of this area. I wonder why he came here today. Why did we bump into him? Are we fated to die here? Ghost King's cultivation in the final stage. Hundreds of thousands of ghost soldiers and ghost generals under his command." Everyone was shocked, and the disdainful disciple's face turned pale. Fortunately, it was dark and no one could see clearly. People became ghosts after they died, which was equivalent to mortals in the ghost realm. There was nothing to be afraid of. However, ghosts who had cultivated were different. Compared to human cultivation, ghost soldiers were equivalent to the chi refining stage, ghost leaders were equivalent to the foundation building stage, ghost general was equivalent to the core bearing stage, ghost marshal was equivalent to the nascent soul stage, and ghost king was equivalent to the tribulation stage. Now, a ghost king at the final stage with hundreds of thousands of soldiers and horses under his command had come. How could they survive? Yu Qianqiu had a toothache. Damn it. What kind of mess was this? A ghost king actually popped out. Wasn't this just scaring people? But I'm not afraid. I'll just run away. What can they do to me? Gu Qingyun suddenly asked, Uncle Master Ko. You said that everyone who came here can't leave, including those who have left the mountain in advance. He was naturally asking those who had experience in the demon region. Ko Xiuhua was utterly disheartened. Leave? Where could they go? When the ghost general went on patrol in his territory, who could hide from him unless they were at the final stage of the tribulation passing stage? Who can escape? That's good. Gu Qingyun heaved a sigh of relief and said, those seniors who left first are really infuriating. Coming to such a dangerous place, they didn't even give us a warning and only knew to run away. If I were to die like this, I really wouldn't be able to take it lying down. Now it's all good. Don't even think about running away. Even if I die, I can die in peace. That's right. That's right. Everyone nodded in agreement. Yu Qianqiu was too lazy to make a fuss. He pinched his chin with his fingers and stared at Gu Qingyun with a strange expression. Suddenly, he patted his shoulder and said angrily, Gu Qingyun, didn't you say you're in the middle stage of the core formation realm? Damn it. So you're in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. How dare you pretend to be my martial uncle and cheat me of 2 high-grade spirit stones? Give me back my spirit stones. With a large number of essence chi pills, he reached the peak of the middle stage of the foundation building realm within a year at an extraordinary speed. Naturally, he could see that Gu Qingyun was still in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. When he heard him call Ko Xiuhua Grandmaster, Yu Qianqiu was stunned. At first, he didn't pay attention, but after a while, he realized that this guy was actually in the middle stage of the foundation building realm. Last time, he suffered a great loss, bowing and giving spirit stones. Gu Qingyun narrowed his eyes and said, that's strange. It seems like you were the one who pretended to be my senior martial brother first. Could it be that teaching you a lesson is wrong? I can't be bothered with you. Look at the situation now, yet you're still thinking about 2 spirit stones. If I can escape from the demon realm, let alone 2 spirit stones, I'll even give myself to you. TSK. You're the one who said it. If you can escape from the demon realm, you'll be mine. Yu Qianqiu waved his hand and pointed in a circle. Everyone heard it. Help me be a witness. He said it himself. Absolute idiot. Don't talk to me. Gu Qingyun turned around in disgust. Everyone looked at Yu Qianqiu and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. This brother didn't know what situation he was in. First, he was pestering for 2 spirit stones, and now he was joking. However, everyone admired his calmness. Everyone's mood eased a lot. Someone even jeered, as long as I can escape from the demon realm, I'll also give myself to you. Ha! Who said that just now? Yu Qianqiu stood on his tiptoes and pointed at someone. So it's a brother from the 10,000 demons. It's you. Remember what you said just now. Don't go back on your word. Everyone laughed as if they were watching a clown perform. They suddenly felt the fear in their hearts lessen. Someone shouted, "Count me in too." Ha! With one person taking the lead, everyone else jeered and shouted, "Count me in, count me in." They used this method to dispel the fear in their hearts. Ha! Well said, well said. Yu Qianqiu cupped his fists and turned in a circle to return the greeting. Count me in. Those who can escape, follow me. I guarantee that everyone will have a good life. No one believed that he was telling the truth. They all thought he was joking. Many people pushed their fists and said, "Then I'll leave it to you, brother." Sorry to trouble you, Yu Qianqiu agreed to everything and kept rubbing his nose. His expression was wild with joy and his eyeballs were spinning around. He was just short of glowing green. Even the 4 women by his side felt a lot safer after he made such a ruckus. Gu Qingyun couldn't stand it anymore. He bowed to Ko Shuahua and said, "Grandmaster, is there really no way?" Before Ko Shuahua could speak, Yu Qianqiu turned and said, "Who said there is no way? How do you know it must be Ghost General? Which eye of yours saw it? The world is big, and there are many capable people. Can't others sing here? So what if it's Ghost General? Who said he won't let us go?" He turned to Ko Shuahua and bowed. "Grandmaster Ko, I believe you must have not seen Ghost General with your own eyes. You also heard it from others, right?" The latter paused and nodded silently. Everyone was in an uproar. They all felt that Yu Qianqiu's words were reasonable. For a time, hope was rekindled. Yu Qianqiu looked at the crowd with a smile, but he smiled bitterly in his heart. When people were desperate, they would grab a straw as a life-saving rope. His words were just to comfort himself and the others. It really couldn't stand up to scrutiny. How could a person who could scare off a pack of wolves with just 1 or 2 lines of singing in the demon ghost region be an ordinary person? He was probably the Ghost General that Ko Shuahua mentioned. Woo, woo, woo. A series of horns sounded. The crowd instantly quieted down and stared at the hillside in the distance. The black light was flashing above, and the blood-red evil spirit was entwined. Then came the sound of thousands of horses marching. The ground under their feet trembled faintly, and they could vaguely hear the neighing of war horses. Everyone's hearts beat faster in their chests. Yu Qianqiu secretly clicked his tongue. Oh my! They haven't seen the person, but the momentum is scary enough. Chapter 110. At the top of the mountain that everyone was leaning on, they could see the clear twinkling stars when they looked up. It was like a different world from the dark clouds that shrouded the mountainside. Elder Son of Supporting Immortal Island suddenly pointed down and shouted, "Elder Dongfang, come look." The elders quickly rushed over, only to see the dark clouds churning mightily at the foot of the mountain, the red and black baleful aura lingering in it appearing and disappearing intermittently. The elders of the other great sects were also alarmed. Ignoring the differences between the righteous and demonic Tao, they all gathered around the people of Supporting Immortal Island. Looking at the murderous aura that soared into the sky from time to time, everyone frowned. Dongfang Chang Ao stood with his hands behind his back and stared at the rolling dark clouds without blinking. After a while, he said in a deep voice, "What kind of monster has such a strong qi? Is it the Ghost General?" Qiu Wuyuan of the 10,000 demons walked up to him slowly and said with a serious face, "Other than the Ghost King, who else has such a qi in this area?" The 4 leading elders of the Daluo sect, the Moon Clan, the Blood Demon Palace, and the Corpse sect also stood side by side with the 2 of them. Their expressions were unprecedentedly serious. "If it really is the Ghost General, I'm afraid none of these disciples will come back," the leading elder of the Daluo sect, Su Qianquan, said in a deep voice. At the moment, whether the disciples at the foot of the mountain were righteous or evil, they were all elite selected from the disciples of various sections. It would be a pity if they died like this. The leading elder of the Blood Demon Palace, Wen Zhongping, looked at the dark clouds and said, "Rumor has it that there are 10 ghost kings and 10 demon kings in this boundless demon territory. All of them have high cultivation. The ghost general is one of them. It is said that he used to be a general who had great power over the army. After he was defeated and died, he made some achievements in cultivation. So, he gathered his subordinates who died with him and became the Ghost King of the Demon Territory. I think that's how the Ghost General got his name. I wonder if anyone has seen his real face." The leading elder of the Moon Clan, Hua Rui, nodded and said, "The Ghost General of the Demon Ghost region was born at the wrong time. Even after death, he is still full of regret. He sings and cries every night. Since someone spread this ballad, someone must have seen it before. It's just that we don't know." Everyone nodded silently. After a while, the 6 great system-allocated sects gathered their divine compass together. For some unknown reason, most of the glowing spots were gathered in the same spot, and a small number of them were scattered everywhere. Logically speaking, they should have been scattered, but based on the 6 divine compass, most of the disciples from the 6 great system-allocated sects were in the same spot. It was very strange. But for now, it seemed that nothing had happened. Dongfang Chang Ao sighed, "Let's wait and see." Everyone turned their attention to the foot of the mountain. The dark clouds were stirred up by the red and black evil chi, but the shock of thousands of soldiers marching suddenly disappeared without a trace. Yu Qianzhou and the other disciples looked at each other, not knowing what to do. Then, they saw the foot of the mountain in front of them suddenly turn bright red, and they could see people in the light. Then, there were a few neighs of war horses. Thump, thump, thump. The sound of hooves came, and a horse rushed up the slope in front of them. A general in armor held the reins and circled the slope a few times. He looked at everyone from afar, and the red light behind him made him look even more majestic. Yu Qianzhou looked at Ko Shuahua, then at Gu Qingyun, and said in shock, "This is the Ghost General. Is he a ghost? No matter how I look at him, he looks like a living person." Unfortunately, no one answered his question. That person raised his leg and kicked the horse's belly, then galloped straight towards the group of people. His hooves moved quickly, and in a short while, he pulled the reins and the horse appeared in front of everyone. Yu Qianzhou's mouth was wide open, and he looked at him dumbfoundedly. The handsome horse was strong, and the rider was burly. He had a sword on his waist, and he was dressed in a metallic shiny armor. His eyes were like that of a tiger, and he looked back and forth at everyone, but he did not do anything that made them feel uneasy. The only difference between him and a normal person was that there seemed to be an indistinct black chi lingering around his body. "Are you really a ghost?" Yu Qianzhou pointed at him, then pointed at his horse and asked. The general's gaze paused on him, and it was obvious that he was a little surprised. He glanced at him coldly, but he did not say anything. When the disciples from the various sects heard his words, they instantly felt like they were about to go crazy. They really had to give it to him. Since when was he able to say anything? The handsome Gu Qingyun's face also twitched, and he glared at him fiercely. In fact, he could not be blamed for this. In the world where his previous life came from, the understanding of ghosts was not like this. They were either ferocious mouths or green-faced fangs. In any case, they had to have a ferocious appearance, unlike this person, who looked like a general on a galloping horse. On this point, there was a huge difference in understanding between him and the people behind him. The general's gaze moved away from the crowd, and slowly swept across the wilderness. He opened his mouth and shouted, "Since there are living people here, and know that the great general is here, why are you not coming to kneel and pay your respects? What are you trying to do by hiding? You have an hour to pay your respects to the great general, or else you will be killed." His voice rolled and spread in all directions. "Go! As soon as he finished speaking, he galloped his horse and left, leaving the crowd in shock. Grandmaster Ko, who is the great general he was talking about? Is it the ghost general you were talking about? Yu Qianqiu turned his head and asked. Ko Shuahua's face was pale, and she nodded and said, "It should be him." "TSK TSK." Yu Qianqiu sighed and said, "This person died and became a ghost, but still became a general, how impressive." His words were full of envy. Rumor has it that the ghost general was a great general who held great power in the army when he was alive, Ko Shuahua said. "Oh. So that's how it is." Yu Qianqiu said as he took a few steps forward, and sheathed the sword in his hand. He patted his butt and turned to the crowd with a smile, "Let's go. Let's go see what the legendary ghost general looks like. This is not an opportunity that anyone can come across." "Oh right, everyone, put away the weapons in your hands. Didn't you hear that he asked us to pay our respects? Since we can't beat him, why are we still holding weapons in our hands? Isn't that asking for death?" The crowd put away their weapons in fear. Gu Qingyun peeked at Yu Qianqiu from time to time, and he really admired him now. Even though he knew that he was going to die, he could still be so calm, and he admitted that he would not be able to do that. Yu Qianqiu walked in front with big, swaying steps, and the crowd followed a few feet behind him. He only stopped when he reached the edge of the slope, and the light from the fire hit his face, and he was truly shocked. At the bottom of the slope was an open plain, and the army camp that was even more magnificent than those in the movies was displayed in front of him. He estimated that there were at least tens of thousands of people. No wonder he was called the Ghost General. Magnificent. Yu Qianqiu was excited, and his gaze fell on the wooden platform in the middle of the army camp. He paused for a moment, then ran down the slope, and walked quickly towards the army camp. The disciples of the various sects were stunned on the slope for a while, and when they saw that Yu Qianqiu was almost at the edge of the army camp, Gu Qingyun jumped down to follow him, and a large group of people had no choice but to jump down and follow him. Outside the army camp surrounded by wooden fences, there were two groups of soldiers standing guard in front of the main gate. Yu Qianqiu looked at them, and realized that these people looked a little like ghosts. Their faces were ashen, and their expressions were dull. Just as he was about to step into the camp, two ghost soldiers with spears stopped him, and stared at him with their mouths open, chirp chirp. For a while. Is this how the ghost story is? Yu Qianqiu was stunned, so these ghosts did not know how to speak human language, and it seemed that their cultivation was not good enough. He immediately pointed at the people behind him, and smiled. "We are here to pay our respects to the great general, please inform him of our arrival." At this moment, an officer walked out of the barracks, and it was the one who rode the horse just now. He only heard him shout, "Let them in." The ghost soldiers immediately retreated to the side, and gave way. Chapter 111. As soon as the officer finished shouting, many ghost soldiers rushed out of the barracks, starting from the main gate of the barracks. They held torches in one hand and spears in the other, standing in two rows, leaving a path hundreds of meters long, all the way to the wooden platform in the center. The barracks of tens of thousands of soldiers and horses instantly became so quiet that even a pin drop could be heard. It was a scene of strict military discipline. Dang, dang, dang. The sound of pipa came from the direction of the wooden platform. There was a murderous intent hidden in it, but it was obvious, as if it was an ambush from 10 sides. Yu Qianqiu, who was smiling, became gloomy and narrowed his eyes. "Are you trying to show off your military might to me?" He had been a soldier in his previous life and had seen such a scene. Those who were timid would tremble on the spot, and they could not even walk properly. This was the power of the military. A faintly discernible aura burst forth from Yu Qianqiu's body. The feeling he gave off suddenly changed, as if he had become a completely different person. The officers standing in front of him could not help but look at him a few more times. Many of the disciples outside the Yuan gate began to breathe heavily. They could hear it clearly. Yu Qianqiu glanced at the officer coldly, as if he was looking at an ant, and the officer's body slightly stiffened. He slowly turned back to stare at the crowd, and said indifferently, "Useless things, a group of living people can't be scared by a group of ghosts. With this kind of courage, how are you going to follow me in the future?" After saying that, he turned around without looking at them. In normal times, if he dared to say such words, there would definitely be many people who would fight him to the death. There were many people with higher cultivation than him, but at this moment, no one dared to make a sound. Gu Qingyun could not tell what the officer's expression was, but a trace of shame appeared on his face. The veins on the officer's neck bulged, and his face showed anger, but he calmed down after a deep breath. He looked at Yu Qianqiu seriously, and was slightly surprised. As a ghost king in the early stage, which was equivalent to the early stage of the human tribulation, he could not see through Yu Qianqiu's cultivation. But this person looked so young, and one really could not judge a book by its cover. At this moment, he became cautious, and raised his hand to lead the way, saying, "Please." His attitude was completely different from before. Damn it. Face was earned by oneself. Yu Qianqiu placed his hands behind his back and glanced at him coldly. Then, he looked straight ahead and replied with an indifferent, Then, he strode forward. The ghost soldiers standing on both sides with their spears were nothing to him. The disciples of the various sects were a few meters away from him, following him step by step. For some people, the military formation of a few hundred meters long was a welcoming display of honor, but for others, it was an increasingly oppressive feeling. Yu Qianqiu treated it as the former. He slowly walked forward, his expression not changing at all. However, the footsteps of the various sects' disciples behind him became more and more chaotic. When he was about 50 meters away from the central platform, Yu Qianqiu noticed that the people standing on both sides of the platform had changed from ghost soldiers to armored officers. He glanced at them for a while and then looked away. His eyes fell on the platform in front of him, where a burly man was sitting. The further he walked, the clearer he could see. He was burly, his hair was tied up, and his eyebrows were slanted to his temples. His eyes were large and full of spirit, and his gaze was like a torch. He had a prominent nose and thick lips, and a short beard. He was dressed in golden armor, and his scarlet cloak fell to his shoulders. There was a long table in front of him, and a golden beast helmet was placed on one end of it. There were also many fruit plates placed on top of it. The burly man picked up a slightly transparent purple wine cup and poured the liquid down his throat with his head tilted up. A maidservant beside him plucked a grape from the table and gently placed it in his mouth. The burly man chewed on the grape and glanced at Yu Qianqiu and the others who were walking over. Then, his eyes fell on a stunning woman in a plain robe who was playing the pipe. His every move showed the demeanor of a general of the military. If one did not know that he was the Ghost King, who would be able to tell that he was here? Yu Qianqiu led the group to the front of the stage and stopped. He glanced at the woman playing the pipe and secretly praised her. She was iron-blooded and gentle. What a great general! Yu Qianqiu's eyes were full of admiration for another man. He glanced at the stage, smiled and said slowly, "Grape wine in a luminous cup, and when one wants to drink, the pipe is urged immediately." Drunk on the battlefield, how many people have returned from war since ancient times? Great General, you are drinking and having fun in this military camp. What a refined mood. I, cultivator Yu Qianqiu, have long heard of the Great General's name. I have specially come to pay my respects to the Great General. As he said that, he cupped his hands in greeting. Suddenly, a general at the side took a step forward, pointed his finger and shouted, "How dare you? Where did this arrogant fellow come from? How dare you not kneel in front of the Great General?" This fellow's voice was loud as well. He did not use any cultivation, but his shout could be heard by everyone present. It scared some of the timid disciples from the various sections. Their legs turned to jelly and they almost knelt down. Yu Qianqiu was unmoved. He glanced at him and sneered in his heart. It seemed like all the generals who looked like Zhang Fei had such a fiery temper. He did not want to lower himself to his level. He looked at Ghost General who was on the stage. The general was so angry that he kept shouting. He strode over and was about to make a move. On the stage, Ghost King suddenly shouted without looking at him, "Stand down." He then waved his hand at the pipa girl and the sound of the pipa stopped. The general was stunned for a moment when he looked at the stage, but he still obediently retreated. The sound of golden armor rubbing against each other was heard. Ghost General stood up from his seat. The braziers on both sides shone brightly on his golden armor, making him look even more extraordinary. He first stared deeply at Yu Qianqiu for a while. Seeing that Yu Qianqiu was smiling at him without fear, he returned a smile. He then played with the purple wine cup in his hand and said slowly in a deep voice, "Grape wine in the luminous cup, if you want to drink, the pipa urges you immediately. Drunk on the battlefield, Lord Grim. Since ancient times, how many people have returned from war? Since ancient times, how many people have returned from war?" He repeated the last sentence for a long time. No one knew what he was thinking. Some of the generals on both sides also recited softly, "Since ancient times, how many people have returned from war?" Although their voices were very soft, it was not difficult to understand the bleakness in their tone. Gu Qingyun stood behind Qin Wendian. His eyes were wide open as he surveyed Qin Wendian from head to toe, as though he didn't recognize him. Shock filled his heart. Is this still the swindling hoodlum I met in the cultivation pavilion? How could he spontaneously compose such a poem based on the situation? If he was pretending to be calm at the beginning, how could he improvise such a poem in front of the famous ghost general of the demon ghost region without this calmness? There were also people with taste among the disciples of various sects, especially the female disciples of the Moon Clan. Women naturally liked beautiful things, and poems were the same, especially poems with a profound artistic conception. The group of women shook their heads and tried to look through the crowd, wanting to get to know Yu Qianqiu again. Unfortunately, a certain someone left them with an unmoving back. For a moment, the fear in everyone's hearts was actually reduced to the lowest point. Suddenly, the ghost general came back to his senses. He raised the wine cup in his hand and looked at Yu Qianqiu with a smile. "Young sir, you are indeed talented. Your impromptu work can be called a masterpiece. You are a rare talent. Then, may I trouble you to comment on the pipa song that my maid played just now? This song was composed by me personally." "Young sir, please comment on whether it can be considered a masterpiece." "Damn it. I am not AF * King talent. What the hell do I know about pipa songs? But this song is like Ambush from 10 Sides that I heard in my previous life. Whatever, I will comment on it. After all, I am an expert who learned to play the pipa from my sister." Yu Qianqiu pretended to think for a moment and nodded. He said straightforwardly, "This song can be considered a masterpiece among the pipa songs, but it has a very bad meaning for the general." In an instant, the generals on both sides and the disciples behind him all focused their eyes on him. "Oh," the ghost general replied. He turned to the side with his hands behind his back and no longer looked at him. He said in a deep voice, "How is it ominous? Young sir, please tell me." There was a hint of coldness in his words. "You're tuning into the LoveLore Library YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.